Good evening. We are reconvening open session, and our first order of business is public comment. So please limit public comments to matters concerning the district and limit it to 3 minutes. This section is not intended to be a dialogue with the board, and the response time to any question will be up to 2 weeks. Just as a rule, policy is that we will limit public comment to 20 minutes on a given topic and 30 minutes total. It sounds like we have seven
in person.
So we will be able to accommodate all that are signed up to speak, but we will be adhering to the 3-minute time frame. So can you please announce who's first?
The first speaker, our first speaker tonight is Mr. Mark Carroll.
Thanks, Steve. And we'll we will give you a 15-second reminder that you are near the end of time if by chance you're using the whole time.
Mr. Carroll, if you could just let me know that the mic is on, it should be a green light on the mic at the bottom.
I believe so.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mark Carroll. I'm a River Forest resident and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Oak Park and River Forest High School Imagine Foundation. Let me start by saying thank you for your tireless efforts to make complex, forward-thinking, and fiscally decisions that put our students first. And thank you for approving the scope of Project 2, most importantly. The Imagine Foundation is proud to be working with you as your philanthropic partner. As you now turn your attention to the funding for that project, we want to share 3 thoughts for you to consider. First, we'd like to update you on our capital campaign. We're only halfway through the phase where we secure our anchor donors, but already have several $1 million of anchor gifts committed. These pledges put us on pace to raise a minimum of $12.5 million for Project 2. As each additional donor makes a pledge, the total amount we can raise climbs from that $12.5 million mark to perhaps double that amount. Our ability to reach a higher goal improves with each step that makes Project 2 more certain, including schematic design, scope approval, the financing plan, and importantly, a defined project start date. Any uncertainty about the project makes it harder to reach these philanthropic goals. Second, we ask that you include philanthropy as part of your formal financing considerations for Project 2. We ask the CFTC to do so, but it doesn't look like they will at this time. We hope you will direct the administration to include philanthropy as a line item in its final recommendation to you. Of course, your plan needs to include specific contingencies in case our fundraising falls short. But if we're all operating on the assumption that there will be dollars donated with other funding mechanisms as a fallback, it's more transparent to have the funding plan reflect that. Our third and final thought is when making your final decision about the funding and timing of Project 2, please take all available information and context into account. This includes student interest, most importantly, facilities conditions, philanthropic donations, the cost to taxpayers, the rampant misinformation intended to confuse the public, the analysis from the CFC, the expertise of the district's finance consultants, and the overwhelming public support for building Project 2. As elected Board of Education officials, you have the authority and ability to make these difficult decisions and thus are in the best position of anyone else in the process to holistically assess the various funding options. Please let us know how we in any way can help you move this ahead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker tonight is Mr. Matt Maloney.
Tony's gonna go.
Matt, are you going after?
I'm going.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Hi, my name is Tony Biasello. I'm a history teacher at the high school and I've worked here since 2004. We, those of us in the red shirts, are here to support the proposal from and from our head of security and our security staff. Students can't learn if they don't feel safe. Our security staff helps them feel safe. They do so much to create relationships with our kids. They show tremendous professionalism. They know the kids, they know their names, they make them laugh. They show tremendous respect. They help create the cultural warmth that I know that our principal is so committed to. And they've had challenges, a lot of challenges the last couple of years, but they really kept going. So I'm here, and I guess we're here to ask you to respect the judgment of the professionals in the building, the adults who work with our kids all the time, who are saying we need more of these individuals to foster a more positive environment. I've been working here for 19 years, and this year it feels like there are unprecedented safety concerns that compromise the learning environment that so many of us value. My new classroom is right above an exit, and the door alarm goes off 3 or 4 times a day. And that might mean that kids are leaving. It might be that other people are coming into the building. We don't know because we don't have enough people to be watching the doors. There's vaping going on constantly, often in the bathrooms. And more concerning, I guess, for some of us adults is that so many adults, security and teachers alike, have been hurt doing their jobs. And, I have dear friends who have been, pretty injured at work. And I think most adults are lucky enough to get to go to work and not be hurt. And it's an upsetting situation. And then I guess lastly, I have friends who are community members who have children who are in the junior highs or the elementary schools who are seriously considering not sending their kids to this high school because of some of their security concerns. For a lot of us who work here, it feels like a matter of not if, but when something worse happens and more dangerous happens. Security helps diffuse these situations before they get out of hand. I really just urge you to be proactive and, take up the principal's proposal to help us get ahead of this problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
First off, thank you to the board members who so proudly serve our communities. My name is Matt Maloney, and I'm a history teacher here, instructional coach for climate and culture. I coach baseball and basketball. I also grew up in River Forest. I live in Oak Park. I've worked here for 28 years, so I wanted to provide some perspective. And I think you can see here, we have a wonderful and passionate group of educators who care about every single child in this building. I see this not as an opportunity to infringe upon any sort of freedoms for the students, yet I see it as an opportunity to bring in and train some more adults that can connect with our students. I've seen our students come out of the pandemic with new needs that we never saw prior. And I know this is a very large institution that provides a lot of opportunities for students to stray. And at times they need additional supports. Our safety and support staff has been a tremendous asset to some of our students who need relationships the most, that sometimes don't find it always in the classroom, but they find it sometimes in the halls. I think this is a tremendous opportunity to continue to establish a culture of warmth that Ms. Parker has constantly provided, and we hope to echo that. And I think it's an opportunity for us to see dollars being spent that could move the needle immediately for students, and also have students in classes, in spaces where they can learn, they can grow in a positive way, and adults that can help them with their social awareness, their self-awareness, and provide opportunities for responsible decision-making that can have a positive impact on everyone in the space. And again, as you can see from the turnout, there's such a wonderful group of passionate educators. And when I say educators, I mean every adult that works in this building. They truly care about our young people. And this is an opportunity for us to provide even additional supports for the students who need it the most. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker, Mr. Wilson Carabello.
Hi, and thank you for giving me the time to speak of this. My name is Wilson Caraballo. I am a third-year teacher here. This is my first school I've ever worked at, and I teach history. When I graduated from college, I knew what Oak Park River Forest was. It was kind of this mythical thing, this school that I dreamed I could go to. And the fact that I got a job to teach here was the most amazing feeling. Graduating during a pandemic and wondering what my career was going to be. And as every year has gone by, that has kind of slowly chipped away. I've not been as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as I once was. And I would like to speak and echo the support for this new security proposal. You cannot learn if you do not feel safe in the building. That is something that they drilled in us in college. You need to be warm and you need to be welcoming. I worry and I get nervous when I come into the building thinking, what's going to happen today? Am I going to have to break up a fight? Am I going to have to console some kids? Am I going to have to wrangle some kids in who are all jazzed up because there's going to fight and they want to show the video to everyone that they can? Okay. Our principal and our security staff have tried their hardest to make this a building of warmth and community, but they are stretched thin. And I worry about what this school will be if we do not step in to try to curb what this has been. I consistently get texts, phone calls, direct messages from friends, from family when an event happens. And it's quite embarrassing that I have to try to explain why is this school getting this way. So I just want to, again, throw as much support as I can behind this proposal and hope that you guys put the functioning of the inside of this building above optics or dollar signs. Thank you.
My next speaker is Mr. Mike Correa.
Good evening. I really don't like public speaking, but it seems unlikely that we're going to be getting together for a beer to discuss this anytime soon. So here goes. First of all, I'd like to thank you for demonstrating the leadership and the courage necessary to advance the Project 2 proposal to the stage of that. I appreciate your taking the time to thoroughly understand the recommendations and the needs they address. I also appreciate your tenacity and seeing through the smoke and mirrors of the Stantec silliness, Bridge and Pool folly, and the other distractions. I know how difficult it must be to make good decisions for our students and community when besieged with the volume of misinformation that has been put into the system. You're now faced with a very complex issue as to how best to fund this work. Tonight, I would like to ask you specifically that you do not choose any option which requires a voter referendum. First, a voter referendum will be very costly. It will delay the execution of the work by at least a year, and it will increase the capital cost by at least $6 million. Further delay and avoidable cost increases are not in the best interest of the students or the taxpayers. Secondly, seeking voter approval for this is simply not necessary. Obviously, this is a large expenditure of funds. We all wish the project were not so expensive. But at the same time, we need to keep this in perspective. This board regularly deals with $100 million decisions. I refer, of course, to the annual operating budget for the school, which for the current fiscal year is just north of $100 million. In very many ways, the Project 2 investment is just one more $100 million decision. Yes, it represents capital improvements versus operating expense, but these are the size of decisions that the people of Oak Park and River Forest have entrusted to you by way of electing you to this board. The voters certainly do not expect to have a referendum on the annual operating budget. And the Project 2 funding decision is not materially different. The contrarians insist on taking this to a referendum is quote unquote best practice. Nonsense. They said the same thing in the December 2018 meeting as part of their opposition to Project One. That was wrong thinking then, and that's wrong thinking now. As you know, the real best practice is to act in the best interest of the current and future students of this school while being responsible to the members of the community. Finally, if the funding plan can avoid a referendum, it may be so upsetting to the contrarians that they never speak to you again. Now, wouldn't that be something? Thank you for your time this evening, and thank you for your service to this community.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Miss Ann Carter. Is that pronounced correctly? Yes, Carter. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ann Kreider, and my husband and I have 3 daughters. The oldest, Phyllis, is a junior here at OPRF. Our middle daughter, Maxine, is a freshman, and our youngest, Evelyn, is in 7th grade at Julian, which means, of course, she is going to be right here before we know it. I wanted to come speak to you in person for 2 reasons. One, to echo what a couple of other people have said, thank you. Thank you for approving the scope of the $102 million project 2. This has been a long road for this community. It's been well documented and you approved the scope of the project. Thank you. Secondly, I think time is of the essence. These new PE spaces are long overdue. They will serve every student in this building with updated, accessible facilities. A referendum would delay it another year, which could possibly then raise prices on this $102 million project. Let's move forward on this now, ASAP. You know, when my youngest was 9 years old, she was on the TOPS swim team, which meant that she got to practice here at the high school at OPRF a few times a week. She's 9 years old, she's in the pool, I'm up in the balcony, I'm watching practice. Practice comes to a screeching halt because there is a rodent crawling up the wall. The kids are shrieking, Coach Paul from TOPS kind of looks. He's like, okay, kids, and then he looks up in the balcony and just kind of shrugs his shoulders at the parents. He's like, what am I gonna do? It's the OPRF pool. And so I say to my daughter that night, you know, don't worry, honey, there's gonna be a new pool by the time you're here. Okay, she's in 7th grade. She's coming soon. She is class of 2028. Will she have a new pool? We can do this. I worry that her peers with mobility issues, will they have an elevator to access PE spaces? Her peers that are boys, will they have a new locker room that does not conjure up images of a prison? Let's do this. I invite our family and friends who want to come to Phyllis's water polo and swim meets. I say, yes, come to them. Come to an away game, please. Away games have elevators. Away games have clean sight lines where you can see the action. Away games have enough spectator space where the home and away spectators can fit comfortably. And they have a clear audio system where you can actually hear the PA announcer. Someone actually said to Phyllis once, she said, where do you swim? This was an opposing water polo player on the club level. She said, oh, I swim for OPRF. Oh, and these girls go, oh, you mean the booby pool? The booby pool? What? There are Greco-Roman tile statues in the East Pool. This is what the opponents are thinking of when they come here. We can do better. We can do this. Let's move forward. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Mr. Saad Tuesday.
Hello, and to echo everyone else, thank you. for all you've been doing. My name is Todd Husey. I've lived in the community for 20 years. I encourage you to fund Project 2 with whatever option is fastest and cheapest. Community Finance Committee recently held a public meeting. The expectation was they would present to you their expert perspectives on debt financing options. I understand they missed the mark. I further understand that 4 of the 12 committee members emphasized a preference for referendum. This minority group seems out of step with our community. A comment from one of the 4 pro-referendum CFC members alarmed me. In favoring a referendum, she argued that, quote, "We are the Community Finance Committee, so we do need to listen to the community," I feel. While seemingly innocuous, I worry that some CFC members have forgotten both their role and their civics lessons about when to use representative democracy. The danger of this quip was the logic that the CFC could not advise you without listening to the community and could do so only through a referendum. To me, this came across as a tactic to delay and to avoid responsibility. Let's face it, years of public input have already been gathered. And if the CFC wanted more input, they could have already conducted focus groups, held more meetings, or run surveys to gather the input. No need to wait another year to advocate responsibility. This governance process is rightly set up for representative democracy. As a reminder for those who might find direct democracy alluring, let's review why we choose representatives like you to make decisions on our collective behalf. 1, expertise. Small groups can become expert, large populations won't. 2, protecting minority interests. The risk of direct democracy is that minority groups' interests are trampled. By electing clear-headed representatives like you, we strive to do better. 3, speed. Small groups of elected leaders can move swiftly. Direct democracy takes years. The purpose of a committee like the CFC is to provide expertise to our elected representatives. And I hope all 12 members will do just that. I'll end by encouraging you to seize the moment. Inaction simply adds risks. The risk of inflating costs and rates, the risk of community discord, the risk of fading philanthropy, and the risk of mischief into our governance processes. None of those risks benefit our children, which is what this is ultimately about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Coxey, that concludes tonight's public comments.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to do a little bit of agenda shuffling. Right?
Correct.
So we are going to move the discussion on policies for first read to now. Just seeing if people are listening. We're going to move the discussion on the revised campus safety staffing recommendation up to next, and then we will move back into our instruction section. So.
All right, so let's get started on this presentation. I know, excuse me.
But we can't skip approval of the minutes. So I do ask, I move to approve the minutes of the February 9th. Any additions, deletions, corrections, or changes? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
Really fine.
Okay, back to Dr. Johnson, the discussion on safety security.
Okay, 3 members of our team are coming up to introduce a topic now that hardly needs any introduction. Principal Linda Parker, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Dr. Sanders, and it looks like by 3 I meant 2. I'm not sure if Cheryl and John want to talk to them. Maybe not. Okay, so we have these 2. And yeah, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. And I do want to just start by saying that I am extremely thankful to work in a high school district that has such profound support from the faculty and staff about items that come to the board. So I just want to say thank you to everyone on my faculty who came out today. At our last board meeting, some very good questions came from the board, Mr. Brown, the proposal for safety and support, which allowed me and Sherilyn to think about exactly what the needs could be at this time in terms of filling that need so that we don't have a void that leaves individuals within our building feeling unsafe. And so I want to just go over where we landed in terms of where we were and to where we are at this particular time as we come to the board today. So as we thought about what we could do to be creative about looking at what needs to be covered in terms of space that would allow us to make sure that our students had safe passage while they're within our building, the maps that were attached allowed you to roll over the items in the diagram that showed where coverage is currently in our building on all 4 floors. And then the blue information is what we're asking for in this current proposal. We were able to come down from our ask of 14 to 6 in response to questions that you had from our last proposal. And then also I'll explain some shifting that we were able to do in order to try to find a way to work within what we have right now. So in the 6 that we're looking for, and what you're looking at the screen is just floor 1, because that is where, by seeing this, you'll see how it replicates on floors going up. The question came up about the doors, like having individuals cover every door, and was that the most efficient way to cover those spaces? We are requesting a security camera monitor so that we can then have someone with eyes of all those locations along with other spaces in our building, which would allow us to at least get a digital image of those who would be exiting that space. And then also be able to call safety and support in an area to let them know what had just happened. It's still responsive in nature, but at least we would have someone who's seeing it as it's happening instead of us hoping that somebody was able to make sure that there was a safe passage either way through those doors that are not supposed to be accessed. That was one person. 4 of the asks were to cover some new spaces in our building and then also just cover each floor. So from 1 to 4 by our new freight elevator, we have new bathrooms that are single gender or single non-gender bathrooms that have become very popular. And there are not consistent eyes back there. They're single use, but they have not always been single use. And so we want to make sure that in that area, we have eyes on those restrooms more often. And on 2 and 3, that is also the area where our new constructed classrooms are. So if we can remember that we built classrooms behind us in this area on 2 and 3. Those were areas in our old construction that were a library and a makerspace, so they were contained. Now we need someone to actually do a walkthrough to patrol those areas. We're suggesting that this person who would be stationed in that area would be able to do that back area. That happens on 1, 2, and 3, that we have an additional area that goes beyond where those bathrooms stop. Where 4 is, which is just a rectangle, there's only ever one person assigned to the 4th floor. So this would provide a second person on the 4th floor so that there can be a rotation and it's not dependent on a single individual to do that whole entire floor for the day. And keeping in mind, if you were to roll over the icons, if you were able to do so, you saw that some of those areas aren't covered during the day when individuals have to take lunch or leave specific areas. So this provides us coverage on floors throughout the day. The last position, the 6th, is asking for someone assigned to the Welcome Center area. Now that we have our safety and support also supporting us with our temporary IDs, the area of the Welcome Center has become a little bit more sparse. And in the day and age of Grubhub and Uber Eats and all of that, it seems the children have that on their phones as well. And so that becomes a giant monitoring as well. So we want to make sure that the Welcome Center and that 1st floor area does have someone who is in there to make sure the students don't go beyond the door going outside. We only have one exit for students at lunchtime, and it's near the north cafeteria, so no one should be exiting out that door en masse during the day. And this person can help us do that while also greeting people who are coming in the building to our welcome center. Keeping in mind that our welcome center person is not only greeting individuals who are coming in for business during the day, but also answers the switchboard phone, like when it rings for school, to be directed throughout the building. Also is checking IDs as students are coming in to the building to make sure that they have those on, and trying to do that in a friendly and greeting way. So this is to provide support within that area. So those are the 6 additional asks for security support. We are also looking and have seen how we can shift some of our current staff who work throughout the evenings up into the more bountiful time of the day, so that there is more coverage during the day. Keeping in mind that security is not like our teaching staff, we have not set up a substitute. So when they are out, that means that there is shortages of people on the floor. If we move some of our people into the daytime, so the before 5 p.m. time, that will give us more coverage during the heftier times of the day. This would mean 2 individuals from our night patrols. And when I say night, evening, so this is before 10 p.m. This does keep in mind though, during extracurricular time, we do have groups, clubs, activities, and things going on. We are aware that moving those people does not leave our nighttime as staffed as we would like it to be, but we also believe that during the daytime with the more students, if we can address that, we can also put some provisions in place with our sponsors so everybody knows what to do for our students so that they exit building after their activities. For that. So that would be a shift that we were able to do in terms of getting more people during the day to help us with lunch times and with building hallway monitoring. I'm going to shift to Roxana to speak to about the EDF funding and the financial impact.
Thank you, Linda. So during the previous board meeting, we shared with the board of how this request is in alignment with evidence-based funding that we use for evaluating our staffing levels in the district, among other things. And at that time, we shared that currently campus safety and support personnel are accounted for in supervisory aid category. Currently, the total FTE that is listed under that category is 34.2. And we shared at that time that not all of that is campus safety. We have other supervisory positions that fall under this category. So the total campus safety FTE is actually 27.2. We wanted to provide a little bit more explanation of how the 27.2 FTE is allocated, just to show how it relates to the recommended ratio of 100 to 101 staff member to 200 students. So currently only 19.0 FTE is allocated to the day shift, and out of those 2 positions are mid shift, which means that they start midday and stay into the evening, so they're not there for the entire duration of the school day. So if we apply the EBF recommended ratio of supervisory positions to the total number of students, given this information, the ratio would actually become 1 to 178, so we're much closer to the adequacy target. And I will say also, like I said, a few words about the financial impact. The reason we separated this request from the overall staffing recommendations that will be presented to the board later today, because the request is twofold. We're not just asking for the positions for the next school year, we are also, because of the immediate needs, asking to approve these positions immediately so we can hire as soon as practicable. And that's why I would like to separate potential financial impact into 2 parts. For the remainder of this school year, the incremental cost of adding the 6 requested positions would be approximately $60,000. And then we're estimating for the 23-24 school year, the cost to be approximately $288,000. We're saying approximately because while we know what the rate of pay per hour is, we're not sure what insurance level the people who will be hired will choose, so that could fluctuate. And so to summarize, our request is to approve additional 6 positions to hire immediately, and they will carry over into the next school year.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
First thing, I want to thank you for coming back with the revised proposal. Obviously, you really listened to the concerns the board raised at the last meeting. And I think the revised proposal is one that makes more sense in context of what we're seeing right now than just throw bodies at a problem that thoughtfully identifies where to put them. I don't think it should ever come to the point where any student, any faculty member, any staff member doesn't feel safe entering this building. I think that's just wrong. And so I'm supportive of getting the additional personnel we need to help create a safer atmosphere. I'm not going to read through the exact language, this is public record down, but there's some things that were put in the memo that we reviewed for tonight's meeting that indicated a rise in certain negative behaviors that it raises concerns. And I don't think the addition of 6 more bodies will eliminate all the concerns that I saw flagged. So I'd also like 2 other things to happen. Thing number 1 is some sort of analysis of the programs and support that we have in the building that could be better at preventing the types of behaviors that are leading to these challenging situations in our building. I want to see if an evaluation of whether or not the programs that we have in place are being implemented with fidelity, if they're evidence-based, if they're not being implemented with fidelity, if there's a chance for course correction, or if we should be looking for new and better programming on the front end to try to mitigate negative behaviors before situations escalate. Second, I appreciate the reduction in headcount. I was one of the ones that was talking about the EBF and the cost. I still think this is a significant new cost, and while I will be supportive, I would also like to see the administration come in with very close to a similar amount of cuts for the next year's budget, because we are 138% of what the evidence indicates we need in our expenditures to meet the needs of our students. And we have a couple of other large cost items that's going to be coming in front of the board. Maybe dealing with facilities. So it's not like the community has unlimited resources. And while as a board member, I believe our primary fiduciary obligation is to this building and the people in this building, we also have a fiduciary obligation to the community and taxpayers. So trying to make sure that we are being wise with our current investments and cutting areas where we don't need the expenditure, maybe even in, I don't know, technology areas. I don't know where perhaps. If we could find some savings that come close to the same dollar amount as these new positions, because once again, they get added to the base and then they grow over time. That's just the truth. So I would like to see that some sort of semblance of financial balance here. That could be forthcoming. That doesn't have to be immediate. I don't need to see that in advance of me supporting this, but I do want to see it. Thank you.
Right.
Yes, first, I want to say that, I want to thank everybody for coming. I am very supportive of our faculty and our staff, and especially of our safety and security personnel. They are overtaxed and underpaid. But I appreciate the revision, and I agree with just about everything that my colleague, Mr. McCary, said. My greater concern is, are we just putting a Band-Aid on something and not getting to the root cause? And not getting to what is the true problem? When I hear our faculty members come up here and say that they don't feel safe in the building, that concerns me. All right, and as far as I can tell from this report, the reason for that anxiety is student behavior. So my greater concern is eliminating how do we eliminate these negative student behaviors, get everybody on the right path. Right. Yes, I'm supportive of this because I think that right now it needs to be done to have control of the building, all right, to keep our people, our students, our faculty, and the remainder of our staff safe. However, I want to see a much deeper dive, right, into these issues and where our students need their supports so that these behaviors aren't bubbling up and are not occurring. I just feel that we're not getting to the absolute root cause of these behaviors. Also, you know, we know that we move very quickly in terms of from basically from punishment to restorative practices, etc. But there's still behaviors still require consequences. All right, and just as an example, on Monday I came into the building. I entered through the alley door. I think that's 12. I'm not sure. Okay. As I approached, I could hear the alarm going off, and then it stopped. So that meant somebody who had come out that door prior to me getting to it. Then I swiped my card. I came in, and about a minute later, I hear the alarm going off again, which means somebody else had exited that door. So really, what are the consequences for someone unauthorized to use that exit and leave in the building? Because they have no, obviously, whoever those people were, had no anxiety at all over what there might be in terms of the consequence. And yes, it's an unsafe practice. We don't know, that door goes flying open and anybody could walk in. And I understand that that's not a safe action. But, you know, preventing it is part of it. Okay, there's got to be some kind of consequence. And I don't think that's happening because I hear those alarms go off almost every time I'm in the building. And it is disconcerting because I just don't, you know, it may be as simple as some of the things that you've done, Principal Parker, for some of the other behavior changes that have gone on, the positive changes that have gone on for the last year or two. So those are my concerns. I will be supporting this and I will be supporting this.
So what I've heard so far, so thank you to everyone who's support, certainly. And of course, it's not acceptable to ever have people feeling unsafe in this building. So I do also want to thank you for revising this. I think it's better. I am a technophile. I'm just going to own that. So perhaps I lean too heavily on technology, but I do think that there's, you know, Ralph alluded to maybe looking at some programming or looking at our practices in the building to see what we could look to perhaps changing or adding additional supports to. I agree with that. I also think that there's probably a technology, like a security technology piece too,
that maybe needs to be looked at, whether it's additional, I feel like this is super loud, I'm really sorry. Additional cameras or different placements or a different system of proximity cards so that you know when students are like nearing an exit, you can have that like their ID that a camera might not provide. I just worry that somebody sitting and monitoring in the Welcome Center is going to have, depending on the retention time for those videos, right, and how long you're keeping those recordings, so I'd have a hard time IDing students, especially if it's happening with a frequency that I'm hearing. The other thing I'd like to know is it's super disruptive, right? Have alarms going off all the time, like that's disruptive. So, I mean, it's, stating the obvious. So, I think there's a whole lot of reasons beyond the safety that we should be trying to figure out how to better get a handle on the situation. Understanding also that there's a safety aspect that people need to be able to leave if they need to leave, right? There's situations in which it's totally warranted. So I just wonder if we've looked at it from a sort of security technology perspective fully as well, because I think that if we did, we'd probably uncover additional costs that we're not anticipating in this proposal. That being said, I support the proposal, but I do think that there might be other solutions out there that are effective in a different way and maybe also quite helpful in alleviating stress and anxiety for our staff.
I'll be brief. I am in support of it mainly because data reflects what we asked for. And also is necessary, but I will echo what colleagues have said is this is probably just the first step of many, and be realistic. You have to figure out why. And different groups of kids will be different from where at this point. And I just don't think, just based on the CCB meeting last night, it's unrealistic for the administration and faculty to address the root cause analysis of what's happening in this kid at home. All right, and I'll say it again, like I said last night, the parents have to get involved of if these are happening more often, the parents have to be involved again. I don't know how to do that. But you have, of course, said certain period of time of day, 3,000 so much kids or X amount of faculty and staff. It's not realistic. You're going to shape them as much as you think you should. That being said, I don't have a solution. It's just an obvious statement that it's not going to be solved here. If something's happening before the kids get into the building, it's happening when we're not in this building. So this is, sorry, I'll call it a Band-Aid because it's not going to fix it. Because the behavior is happening for a reason and different groups of kids for different reasons. Unless that's changed, I don't see how this is going to change in the long term. So I'll support it, but we are far from addressing this issue.
Thank you. So I don't need to re-plow old ground. I'll just offer a few additional thoughts. So when we met 2 weeks ago, I think the general guidance based on your initial proposal from the board was, in my mind, 3 things. One, are we just throwing bodies at all the right places and just the quantity of where? The second was the root cause issue. And then the third was the issue of how are we going to balance this with our resource needs and the dollars. Okay. And as I say that I've grown up in a business and had full accountability for safety. It is critical that people do feel safe, but again, how do you achieve that? And it isn't the right thing. So when I look at what's been presented, I thank you for listening because I think you've at least began, in terms of it, you've looked at leveraging technology and doing other things other than just saying, I'm going to have a person at every place. If you need 14, why not 28 or 50? What's the right answer? I think from that end, you addressed that one and made some improvements, and for that, I thank you. I echo the comments of my fellow board members in that I don't see this addressing the root. I mean, and when I hear about it, from both the behavior-based issue and the evil iPhone, right, or whatever it is that people have for sharing stuff, we've got issues that need to be addressed, and I don't see this as the solution. And then the third piece is the finance, because that is a responsibility for it. And I echo our support with what Mr. Martiri said, which is, we are a district that is funded at 138% of adequacy. We are a well-resourced district, and we put those resources for our students, and we need to put them where they are needed the most for our students. So if this is an area that those resources are most needed, I am in support of that. But that means, where is it that, that they're not needed as much? Because it is, there is a zero sum or an ability to manage that. It's not just, I need this, I need that, I need that. We need to support what the administration feels is most critical to running this institution with that balance. So with that said, I will support it with the caveat that Ralph said, which is, we've got to then say, where do we get, what resources can we redeploy to achieve this? Okay.
I was just gonna say, I understand completely about the root cause analysis and then the deep dive. And just ask that we can all be courageous as we dive in, because we're gonna find things. And I just wanna make sure we're in support of finding them and then addressing them.
Yes, that last night. Trying to avoid hurt feelings or trying to avoid talking about the truth is, it's gonna make it worse. Said last night, CCB, I'm saying again, we have to do it. So I'll support you if it has to get a little ugly. But what choice do we have at this point?
I'm totally there with my fellow board member, and so part of that has to be our inward look, has to be just as critical, right? In evaluating what we're doing. And if what we're doing needs to change, of course, or a revision and implementation, then we need to do that too. Or we have to be as critical about our own processes.
I also like to add about the financial impact. As I explained, we presented staffing recommendation for campus safety separately because of the immediate need, but we also included the overall impact in financial summary that is included in the staffing memo for the 23-24 school year. So we'll go over in detail over that recommendation. You will see we already found some savings and we will continue to work on.
Okay, it's appreciated.
Thank you. So this will then be an action item in our regular board meeting, our special board meeting that is after this committee of the whole concludes. Where's everybody going? We expect that to be somewhere between 11 and 11:15 for anyone who would like to hear us out.
And I not only want to thank the faculty members for coming. I was a history major back in the day in college, and a couple of people spoke out with history teachers. I'm so proud of you.
Okay, we're going to continue, and we're going to loop back to our instruction and our first item. Well, I'll wait.
Yeah.
We'll wait until we have
The tiny candy.
Could you turn off the microphone? Hit the button. Thank you. That's which of the back half of the bag doesn't play the sound. Yeah. We'll pull it up in 1 minute.
I think you can, we can keep moving. So
Say,
Ready?
which presentation was pulling up that PowerPoint? The PowerPoint? Could you pull up the PowerPoint
Oh, for which one?
in the,
This one?
no, the one with said racial equity?
Oh, right here.
Yes.
All right.
Presentation.
Yes, please.
We're in the instruction agenda, item 8A is our racial equity programming. And Dr. Johnson, I turn the floor to you.
All right, so the item that was designed to kick off our meeting. Dr. Applewhite is here. To take us through our racial equity programming, giving an update on priority 1 of our strategic plan. Focused specifically on racial equity. Dr. Applewhite will be taking the lead in the presentation, but you also have members of the team present as well for questions and support. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Applewhite.
Good evening. So when I undertook the role of executive director of equity and student success, my main goal was to come in and learn as much as I could about the organization, what was happening from a racial vantage. What had been happening to staff and students of color and staff in general, and obviously to find out why I was the third person in this role in as many as 4 years. I began to look at the work that had been previously done, the previous goals that were set before me, and I knew immediately where I wanted to begin and how I wanted to make an impact in this role. I am collaborative by nature. But I believe that no one person can make an impact, just like no one person can make lasting systemic change in any organization. So there are leaders, but the real work that is to be done, you need people to follow you, right? And so my team is here to assist me with this, and so they've been assisting me with this work all along, and they've been doing a great job. But I wanted to kind of show you where we are in terms of what the office has been doing this year. So we started with tentatively drafting out goals for the strategic plan. This is just a strategic plan. This is just a draft of our goals. So we are in the first stage of this. The next step will be teacher input. So my team and I have taken a look at these goals. However, we are with the health team in the next stages of development with creating a team of teachers to give us input and feedback on these goals. And so once that's done, we'll finalize these and create our strategies and our next steps in terms of action. These goals will be 3 to 5 years in terms of taking the next steps and how we will accomplish them. However, more short term, the Office of Equity has developed their own short-term goals. These goals we felt were important to accomplish over a short period of time to impact student outcomes. Goals such as developing a comprehensive professional development plan for next school year, impacting the racial equity analysis tool, creating a facilitator's guide, as well as training and redesigning, and well, not necessarily redesigning, but I say redesigning, but redeveloping this tool to make it more universal. Refining systems, such as creating a more equitable incident reporting form. Right now we have a racial incident form. However, the Office of Equity is the Office of Equity, so there are more issues besides race that come into this office. And so we want to make sure that students know that there is a place that is for them and is equitable, so to speak. So we need a tool that embodies that. And so we're working on that right now. Which leads us to the strategies for our goals. My team has each taken on a task in those goals. So each of them has a role in helping me accomplish goals. For instance, the trauma-informed interventionist is working diligently to create a trauma-informed climate. He is working with the division heads and trying to set up meetings so that we can create a more trauma-informed culture. Motivational mentorship has really stepped up and have been meeting with PSS teams on creating a better referral system so that students can be properly referred and be provided with more support. And then our community liaison as well has been working to create a more welcoming environment for parents. There are a number of initiatives that are also coming out of our office. CARE is not new. Trauma-informed intervention practices are not new, though the trauma interventionist is kind of new in his role. He is carving out a niche for himself. He's working diligently with student support services to help provide more restorative practices. What is new in the Office of Equity is MTSS, or multi-tiered system of support, has moved back under the umbrella of equity. Motivational mentorship is not new, but there are some systems that have changed, and we are redeveloping how motivational mentorship is supporting students. And we are developing and working with some different partnerships right now in trying to reestablish how we analyze our equitable outcomes. So we are working with we are working with a partner, but we are also shopping around to figure out how we can redevelop the REIT to better utilize it for our organization. So again, making it more universal. There have been some major changes in certain areas under those initiatives. So in terms of CARE, we have expanded it to include now all daytime staff. It used to just include certified staff. And then we've trained and brought in new care team leaders. So now that includes safety and security, buildings and grounds, our food service employees. So they are now all participating in care team professional development. That was not happening prior to this year. Our trauma-informed practices, our trauma-informed interventionist is now collaborating with DePaul University and Oak Park Township so that we can now start maximizing the utilization of the peace room and start opening it up so that our students can now start using that space more. We are working with our parents to create more diverse parent groups. That has kind of thinned out our population of diverse parent groups. We want to make sure that we have parent groups that represent the diverse population of our students here. Right now, I think Apple is our strongest parent group that we have. However, we have other populations of students here who have needs that need to be supported. We want to make sure that their parents know that they have a space here at the school. I've been meeting with students who feel that their voice isn't necessarily represented, and we want to make sure that they have a niche here in the building. Something that Mr. Garland and I have been speaking with after talking with our Latinx population is that they don't necessarily feel as represented and supported. So we want to make sure that they are seen. So we're doing something different this year. We're sending some care team members to a Latinx conference next month. And then we're planning on having our first ever Latinx professional day to follow with our Black Professional Day that we annually have. Motivational mentorship really kicked off in January of this year because we didn't have our coordinator left us abruptly at the beginning of the year, so we had to search for a new one. Currently, we have 50 students that are attending quite regularly, though we have more people that drop in.
We're utilizing a new tier system with motivational mentorship. So we have tier 1 and tier 2, which is a more targeted group of students that we work with. And then we also purchased a SEL curriculum that we are working with those tier 2 students with. And so the tier system of motivational mentorship, our tier 1 part of motivational mentorship is open to all students. And so parents can refer their students, teachers can refer students for mentoring, counseling. They can just drop in when they want to. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They can come to a lunch or study hall, any free period that they have. But tier 2 is a little bit stricter. It's referral based. And they're referred by their counselors, their deans, their social worker, or their mentor. And it's a bit more focused, it's self-development, and it's a smaller group setting, and it's on Thursday. Something else that's different with motivational mentorship is that they're partnering with mentor studies. And so the coordinator goes in on Thursdays and provides SEL instruction with the teacher for mentor studies, so that when that tier 3 of mentor studies is done, students are not just left out there. They can go down to tier 2 of motivational mentorship and still be provided with additional support. So we are trying to determine what students need so that we can be an additional asset and resource in the building for those students. So the multi-tier system of support, we are trying to make it more equity centered and monitor what takes place in this program. And to talk about the 3 tiers, so tier 1 of multi-tiered system, there are 3 tiers. The first tier is for everyone. The second tier is a bit more supportive. And then the third tier is a little bit more targeted and restrictive. And so multi-tier systems deal with SEL, attendance, you deal with the behavior of a student, and the systems are a continuum of robust instruction and responsive support, and they're evidence-based. And so we're really tracking and monitoring what takes place with students in this area. So we're focusing on literacy support, math, and then their social, emotional, and academic behavior along this continuum. So what we hope to accomplish over the next 3 years is to build sustainable systems that focus on strategic planning and thinking, building transparent systems of monitoring, creating universal systems and processes, creating and really focusing on these tier systems of support, really focusing on under that NCSS as well as mentoring, and then promoting cultural representation, making sure that every student as well as faculty members feel like they're represented and they're seen in this building. And then having a commitment to the staff, family, as well as the community, and building trust and transparency, but then also having targeted professional learning for staff. And we're doing things with students now as well. And then we want to create learning that supports student cultural development. So my team is here if you have any specific questions for them that relates to their area.
Questions?
Well, first of all, thank you for the role you're doing in the team, and I question if you have enough resources and people to do this position. It has already been done for the whole school. So if that's even something that needs to happen, like as we talked about resource allocation, that has to be discussed as well. So I think if one trauma person, one person for $3,000. So that's something else I'd like to see done at some point sooner or later. But secondly, I want to kind of bring up something that's not necessarily in this, but it probably should be in some aspect. I have spoken with, I'll be very general, because I don't want to make sure that's not able to determine who or I'll speak. But there is a issue as we talk about equity in this building. So as we get the tracking, we can try to get more kids of color and these classes, AP honors, so on and so forth. And the sophomore comes up, continue on that track. There's other hurdles that hopefully that we have to understand why it's not gonna happen, why we adjourn, because but what's concerning is I heard on one occasion that some of these students, even prior to detracting, were steered by the counselor to not take it. Even though they tested appropriately, they were steered by a counselor to not do avionics classes. And the one student I told that student, I said, what was the outcome? Essentially, the parent got involved, challenged the teacher, the counselor apologized, and the child progressed. But I said, that's not good enough. Because that behavior, the apology was empty, in my opinion, because nothing changed in that behavior, and because you just got caught doing that behavior. So my challenge would be, is there a space for these students and these parents to voice this concern safely without any repercussions? Because if that challenge fails, what happens to that child that's in the building has to worry about repercussions of that accusation. So I'll be very blunt with this because this upset me because it's not, I heard the same thing. I was told I should be working at Pizza Hut by a teacher in high school. The most obvious is a manager at Pizza Hut. And listen, you know who you are, right? But obviously I'm not, there's nothing wrong with working at Pizza Hut, but it should set a limit on me what I could be as a child. So is there a space within this office and do you have the agency to address something like that? If you don't, we need that.
Yes, there is. There is space and there is agency to address that. That is a lot of the work that we are attempting to do in our care professional development for one. That has been the work that we have been attempting to do all year with our setting expectations for students. Also with teaching our staff to call out those inequities when they see it and have those courageous conversations with each other, as well as looking at the data of the counselors to see how many students are being placed in classes and having those conversations, as well as having students being able to speak up when they feel inequity is taking place. Now, we are having students get better at that. We have had students and parents reach out to us when they feel that counselor is not reaching out to them, or they're not getting the classes that they feel they should have. We do look into those cases. We do go back and look at a student's classes, their grades, their records, their data. We do have conversations with those counselors or a particular counselor when that takes place. We do rectify that situation and try to make sure that the student gets the classes that they deserve. However, we are making strides to ensure that this is not something that keeps permeating in our building and taking place. I will say that this is a slow process. We're not catching everything. We are catching what we can. We are trying to put systems in place where this doesn't continue to happen. However, this is a slow process. And it is going to take time and it's going to take a lot of work. Yeah. However, we are trying to teach our students to advocate for themselves, and they are picking it up and they are understanding how important it is to use their voice.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll just reiterate. There's something that is needed or more is needed. Please bring it to the board.
But I think that it's very important to get the parent groups more active and involved as well. And so that is the thing that we're really focusing on and trying to do is get our parent groups more active and more involved now so that they have that space to talk about these things and let us know what's going on with their students in the building.
I just have a quick question. I don't know if you can answer this. So that behavior is demonstrated under the union these things policy. If that's happening, we have a BDP for student bad behavior, corrective action. What's the policy for bad actors that are not? These are adults that shape and shaking. Well, what happens there? You don't answer now, you don't have it. But we have good at. I want to start thinking about that as we're going forward. If this is the current thing, whoever it is, doing harm, lasting harm, we can't just hold students accountable and not be adults in this building.
Yeah, I mean, your question actually falls into two categories. To read this, I'll just quickly speak to that if I could. You know, on one hand, if it's a situation that comes up once, you know, it's a matter of a conversation, right? It's a matter of approaching it just the same way we would be. You put it in the context of the DEP. It's a situation for challenge and growth. Patterns become a little bit different over time, and they, you know, can be addressed accordingly. But I think it's right for us with this important work to recognize that we are dealing with mindset shifts as we move forward, and we need to approach it from the perspective of growth initially, right? In all situations, until we get to a clear point that growth is not happening when it's, you know, clearly needed, and then other steps can be taken. Yeah, I'll get that. Thanks.
Well,
Dr. Applewhite, and hope 4 years from now you are giving this report again.
So do I.
and I,
Couple of questions and comments, and I appreciate the emphasis that you put in your presentation on utilizing evidence-based practices. And so my day job is analyzing education systems and trying to push them to utilize evidence-based practices. That's what I do for a day job. So I have a question about the CARES professional development. Is that in fact an evidence-based program? Because one of the problems we've identified, and I work with ISBE on this, is that there's a lot of programs that claim to be good on equity and implicit bias, but many of them are not evidence-based and counterproductive. But there are a number of ones that are awesome and are evidence-based. So are we doing the vetting on the front end to make sure that the professional development we use as follows through our MTSS system, et cetera, are all evidence-based, research-based programs that have been shown to have positive results? Because like I said, there are great ones out there, and there are ones that are not so much.
So the care professional development is in-house professional development that we provide. And so that is primarily me providing professional development with the staff, with the care team leaders that are about 40 of our staff members that volunteer to be care team leaders to assist in providing that professional development here. So we meet about every 2 weeks to discuss the issues. So at the beginning of the year, there was I gave them an assessment to determine what the level of equity work that had taken place here. And so from that, we used that to determine where our work would lead us this year. So we looked at that data to kind of drive our decisions this year, along with some other things that were going on. So this year, we want to do kind of like a retreat to kind of delve more into, we also use the panorama data as well. So that was the data that we used to determine how we were going to drive our professional development. So we don't have a professional development or developer that's coming in that's driving those sessions. So they are 7 sessions between 60 to 90 minutes a year that we have to determine what we're doing. So from that, teachers are to then use those reflections of staff members because they're no longer just teachers. They are then to go back. It's kind of like a snowball effect. So they use that analysis to then go back and affect change in all of their spaces, whether that's classrooms, the hallways, their TPT, their division meetings, and then stand out there. And so they're basically reflecting on what their practices are, whether it's their bias or whether or not they are holding their expectations for students or what have you. So not necessarily in that way, though we are using some research to determine what our professional development is, if that's answering your question.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. And so I think part of what might be helpful going forward is looking at like this stuff that's coming out of Stanford University and the stuff that the National Equity Project utilizes for helping improve practice and pedagogy in response to identifying bias of any type in the classroom. implicit in particular, right? And they have some really good evidence-based practices that help eliminate issues in the classroom. And I think if we can provide additional support to the adults in the building that's based on the evidence of how you can enhance practice to eliminate bias in practice, we will move the needle forward faster. So I just would encourage looking at some of that stuff. The second question is, and I really appreciated how you talked about the CARES program, but this ties into Bree's point. You really raised a core issue, and it's a barriers analysis. And I don't know, Greg, that we've ever had the opportunity to do a thorough one.
A barriers analysis?
Yeah.
Not specifically this program, you know.
Yeah, okay, so maybe down the road, and this is be a place where we can invest resources, is to provide you with the resources you would need to do a pretty thorough barriers analysis to determine where, systematically we've created hurdles that we shouldn't create, predicated on race or ethnicity or whatever, and identify those barriers and once again, utilize evidence-based practices to it. So I think that might be a good thing to incorporate in the next couple of years. These are not overnight things. None of this is overnight, and I get it. But I think if we're very systematic in our approach and we stick to the evidence, I think we could really, I think there's no reason this high school can't be the role model for the nation on not only eliminating bias, but eliminating gaps in outcomes by race and ethnicity. We have the resources. I think we have a board now, and hopefully a board that will continue to be fully supportive of going down this path. But it's a hard path. And one of the best ways to steer down that path is to understand where barriers have arisen over time, right? So I would encourage that work to be done in the next couple of years as part of this. Thank you.
Others? Fred?
Yeah, I have a few comments and questions. First of all, thank you for this. And the first thing I'd ask is that if your whole team's here, if you can introduce them so we know we can put faces to the names that we hear.
Using
I
the
know.
starting lineup.
Yeah.
Coming to the stage.
I don't know about this.
Okay.
Thank Fred, you're on.
Hi, everyone, good evening. I'm Ty Garland. I am the community outreach coordinator. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Deeks, Curtis Deeks. I'm an informed school interventionist.
Hi, my name is Brianna Berg and I am the program coordinator for Motivational Mentorship. Hi, everybody. You might know who I am, but I'm Kristen McKee, coordinator for learning analytics and supports. And I'm the new member that as Tanya mentioned, got moved into the equity department this year.
And I am Melody Brown. I'm the administrative assistant to the Department of Equity.
It's me.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for your report. And I like the direction that you're going. Makes a lot of sense in my mind. Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about things. There's been a subject has to do with the REAP, and I think some of our growing pains is that we established a policy a few years ago, and I don't think anybody really had understood or known what a REAP was at the time, what it would look like and how it would work. And so I think that some of the things that we've experienced over the past year or two may be growing pains to really understand it. And I thank you for because I think it's really important to put together the facilitators guide and working through it. And it may not look the same in terms of every subject that you're looking at to analyze. As for, when I go through this, motivational mentorship, which I think is one of our very critical programs, is waned since over a few years, and I'm glad to see a second tier be put into it. It was started by a very charismatic young man who overcame a lot of issues that he had in his lifetime, and he had a lot of kids involved in it. And I would hope that it would continue to grow and serve, many more of our students. The multi-tiered student systems of support that have moved into your area. One of the things that concerned me a little bit, maybe I'm just not understanding, and I'm a little confused. In your report, you had a paragraph about the multi-tiered systems of support, and I just want to make sure that that those are not just for marginalized students, that those supports are there for everyone, but your focus is going to be to make sure to get those supports as needed to those students who do need them.
Right.
Okay. And then finally, I would just point out, you talked about involving parent groups and getting them active, which I think is great. I think it needs to happen. I think the biggest problem we have has to do with those parents who don't join parent groups or out there trying to transverse this institution without the support of one of those parents groups. And they're really the ones that we really need to capture. Because, for various reasons, they don't get involved. It could be work, it could be other kids at home. I mean, there just are a lot of different reasons why parents might not have time to get to some of these things. And those are the ones that probably need to seek out and offer support and direction to.
Thank you. Can I ask one tiny follow-up to that?
What do you guys think?
Just one funny little follow-up. So one of the best evidence-based practices that has been shown to really turn things around is utilization of tier 2 interventions. And so my question is, do we have adequate staffing there? And I would really like your thoughts around that. Because when you look at the evidence-based school funding formula, every practice that formula invests taxpayer money in has a statistically meaningful correlation to improving student achievement over time. Utilization of tier 2 interventionists is 5 times statistically significant. It is one of the biggest bangs for your buck. So I would like to know if our staffing there is adequate, if we think we need more, and how that's going to land. Once again, not overnight. This is as you're building your team.
So that's something that we're looking at right now. So
That's a good answer.
So we're looking at that right now. So that's something that Kristen and I talk about all the time. We are working to develop this NTSS program as it has moved into our department. So we are talking about staffing right now in some of the areas of the NTSS program. So we're not done with that conversation yet. So.
Yeah, I want to jump in really quickly though, and also add, I want to, Ralph, your comments there, your question there parallels one that Kabri made earlier tonight. And I want to thank the board for consistently pressing the administration to identify areas where we might need to increase allocation or shift allocation for critical areas to improve student learning outcomes. We obviously that foreshadows some of the conversations that we're gonna have later tonight with our standard recommendations, which is of course why I'm bringing it up. But it won't begin nor end there. It will be something that we will continue to look at as we move forward, and we will continue to not be shy about bringing those items to the board. So I just want to thank this board over the past 2+ years for continually bringing that question to our attention.
So. You know me, I understand I have more tier 2 staffing, but and now it sounds like you and I have very similar jobs. And so one of the things that Tanya and I have been talking a lot about is removing barriers to access to tier 2. And especially working with her team members and trying to create pathways. And then also, you know, Tanya brought up adding motivational mentors to mentor study so that when mentor study fades out, that your support is still there. So those are the type of barriers we're trying to eliminate barriers and increase access. And so I think once that starts happening, I think we're gonna get a truer sense of the need. And so I think that's kind of been the work that we've been talking a lot about is like I've been working hard with the team on how are we collecting data, how are we asking important questions of our students and our parents to see what the real needs are. So I think we can't answer that right now, but I think that's one of the things I'm hoping becomes more evident as we move forward with everybody.
It's great to hear that's what you're looking. I mean, that's what we're looking at. It's a real bang for the buck, and it really helps turn things around.
Sure.
I don't really have much to add. I echo what my colleagues have said, and I just want to say thank you for the work and thank you for coming out on a school night to join us. It's great to see the team, right? So thank you for that. One thing that has occurred to me as we're talking, I think Bridge hit on it as well, is you know, we have students coming into the building who are dealing with a lot of trauma at home, but we also have parents who are dealing with a lot of trauma, right? I mean, it always comes from somewhere. And so I'm just not, this isn't a today issue. This is like a future state issue, but I think it would be really great if we could at some point develop those partnerships within the community to help parents as they need it, right? As they're struggling with community services or other supports that they might be able to utilize that will then, of course, you know, help them hopefully function a little bit better as parents, right? So their kids can, you know, sometimes having come from a family that was a bit fraught, right? Like sometimes we feel like caregivers for our own parents. And so, you know, when you're a kid, it's not optimal. Anyway, interesting. But thank you for the work and Godspeed.
I just had a couple topics to touch base on. First of all, you know, the challenge of you being the third and 4 years is, you know, is a challenge for me as a board member just to kind of follow the bouncing ball. So I you know, in addition to commitment to this work, continuity in this work is equally as important to its success. So I would love to see continuity, and I'm thrilled to hear certain pieces that, you know, at least resonate in my head when we talk about the multi-tiered interventions. That has been something that has been built, coming in and taking shape. So that's just, it's a challenge that you face, and you know, we need to continue to support your work. I echo, you know, the whole discussion on REIT, you know, as I reflect on it, I've seen 2 analyses in my time tenure as a board member. One is related to that I can recall. So that disclaimer takes. One was for the safety and security, and one was related to the building. Okay, so why those 2 were chosen, et cetera. I mean, the need for discipline in that to me is critical, but and also then, and I think Freddie said it's growing. How do you do it? My my candid reaction is I've seen it is it's like we have the answer and then we kind of put the words to kind of fit what we want it to be. And I hope it's change, it is in a way that it becomes a more natural process. But I think it takes practice and time and for that to occur. But I think the biggest thing, I want to thank Cabri for kind of waking me up on something that it has been out there, which is we put in place a freshman curriculum, right? Which basically simplistically says we level the playing field and allow the adults in our building to play a higher role in making decisions on the next step of our students versus having it be made by, bias from, middle school, wherever it came from. That puts a lot more weight on the adults in our building to be able to then do that job and do it well. In addition to the challenges of differentiated teaching, which is we've talked a lot about, that is a real need. And Cabri, thank you for raising it, because that issue existed. I mean, it's existed for a while, and so we need, in some ways, it's systemic that needs to be addressed. So thank you, and I appreciate your response to his question. But it, to me, really surfaces something that is really. Otherwise, it's a freshman curriculum, right? All we've done is move the ball down, 25 yards and stopped, and we've not achieved that much.
If I could, let me add one little piece of that, because I just don't want to transition off that topic without saying this. So the context in which you asked the question initially, Cabri, to build on that, was, of course, where it matters most: an individual situation, a kid talking to an adult in the building, and how we interpret, and analyze, and respond to that. And then how we might systematize that as far as adults responding to kids and having kids talk to adults and so on and so forth. But at the other level of analysis is equally important as well. There's a macro analysis. How are we looking at our overall data in the school to figure out what trends we're seeing with recommendations and placements as we move from freshman to sophomore year, and also sophomore to junior and junior to senior. So part of the way that we're gonna, and we actively are right now, analyzing the effectiveness, and we plan to analyze the future effectiveness of the freshman curriculum, is to monitor that data on a larger scale, so that we see what happens with these students when they move to not only sophomore year, junior year, senior year, what happens as they graduate. This is part of the freshman curriculum evaluation plan that we have put out there. And so that work is, we've been public with that, we've committed that. Dr. Fiorenza, Kristen McKee have played a significant role in not only defining what we want to do, but tweaking how we're monitoring and collecting and analyzing that data. So that is something that is of critical importance. Otherwise, what you're saying, Tom, is exactly right. We just simply detract a freshman class and, oh, maybe we did that, let's go on to something else. That's malpractice, right? So our job is to make sure that we are implementing and monitoring with fidelity, and we're committed to doing that.
Okay. Thank you very much to you and your team.
We're good on that.
You were asked for one item.
Yes.
We are going to take a 3-minute intermission, and we'll reconvene after that. We're going to pizza.
Green light, go ahead.
Okay, our next order of business is the finance agenda, and the first item is the 2022, 2020, 23, 24 staffing recommendations. Dr. Johnson?
Yes, so we've had two fairly involved topics to discuss so far this evening. Fortunately, this one is, very light and okay, we have quite a bit to discuss here. So this is our yearly staffing recommendations report that we bring to the board as we analyze where we are this school year and where we would like to go in subsequent years. We have 5 members of our team who are here to help answer questions for this report. Dr. Sanders, Ms. Parker, Dr. Fiorenza, Ms. Newman, and Mr. Cruz. I'm turning it over, I think, first to Dr. Sanders to give a quick overview, and then we'll open it up for the questions. So I believe, so Dr. Sanders, go ahead.
Thank you. So as Dr. Hansen said, each year we present staffing recommendations that are expressed as full-time equivalency or FTE. And just as a quick reminder, for a teaching position, it's a teacher teaching 5-year-long sections. For other positions, it's typically an 8-hour day or 10.5-hour day. So this memorandum provides an overall assessment of staffing levels and recommendations based on student course requests, enrollment of students, and also requests for new positions and represented to the district leadership. Just for an ease of processing it, we group them into 4 categories, and the 4 categories are determined by the role the positions play in providing services to our students. So the first category that we're going to discuss is instructional classroom positions, and I want to combine it with instructional support non-classroom positions, because I will ask when we talk about general education to Dr. Fiorenza to talk about both classroom and non-classroom positions that are faculty positions, and when it comes to special education, we'll ask Ms. Newman to provide additional detail. So after careful consideration of all student course requests and sectioning, and also evaluating non-classroom positions, the overall recommendation is to increase the FTE in classroom positions by 2.7. At the same time, we're able to evaluate our instructional coaching positions in both general education and special education, and we recommend an increase of 0.8 and in special education and 0.4 specific in general education. So I will turn it first to Ms. Newman to talk about special education, because that's where we have high increases and also higher decreases.
So the biggest ask is the full-time FTE in the site program. And this is due to legislation that was passed in 2021, House Bill 40, where students are required to be educated through the year of their 22nd birthday. So it used to be the day before their 22nd birthday, students would be exited from special education services. Now the student's birthday is in October, they stay through June of that year. So that's a significant increase in number of students in that program. We are anticipating an increase. We currently have 33 students, and next year we'll have 51 students in that program. The second increase comes from the need for co-teaching support. So in particular, at transition level and college prep level courses, in evaluating needs for next year in order to provide, to stay in line with our 70-30 mandate. And when that's not possible, ensure that we really try to focus that we're making sure that special education support in those areas. And finally, the last piece is for special education electives. And this is specifically for our teen students. We, in previous years, were offering 1 elective. We due to an increase in students would need 2 sections. And this is in their adapted electives. So an adapted art class, adapted foods class, and then also offer adapted acting and adapted choir.
Do you talk about instructional coaching?
Yes, so we also evaluated our instructional coaches, those were previously funded through the IDEA grant. After evaluating needs in the department, we decided there's currently a 0.8 position to move that position back into the classroom to allocate the IDEA funds for other needs.
Are there any questions for?
So we still get the funds, you're redeploying.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Durando, please speak. General education.
Arkin had a question for.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I have a question about the coaching because it was somewhat of a heavy topic last year. That we received these 2 positions for instructional coaching and special ed. And that they were not costing us anything because they were part of a grant. So now we hired two coaches, right? So if we're giving up one of them, what happens to that individual?
I don't want to speak specifically to a person, but the position is being reallocated.
Right.
I can answer your question about the individual. The individual will be reassigned to the class, so that person is not goes.
Wasn't sure how much that.
I understand.
But we moved the funding for that position from a grant to our tax.
Right.
Is what I think Greg was getting at, right?
That was the next thing I was.
Yeah, I mean, that was the question I had, so I mean, I thought you were hitting it.
Not for this position, so. We when we go over the financial impact, you will see we did not count elimination of one of the special education coaching positions as saving position for that specific reason that it was, while it was not part of regular staffing costs, but it was still funds that this received through IDEA grant. So the costs for that we have currently in IDEA grant would be reallocated for other purposes.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that if you've taken a person, you've eliminated their position, you're putting them back into the teaching pool. So that salary is now coming out of our annual budget rather than a grant. So the question then is, does that mean that there's attrition and you saving somebody in retiring position or how is that happening financially?
Yes, so I want to be clear that we didn't take the coaching position out of a grant, added that into our staffing, just inflated, staffing numbers otherwise. That don't happen. We recognized our overall staffing needs for special education and decided to meet those needs that existed prior to anything related to coaching by using one of the coaches for that gig. Does that make sense? And so you'll see that when that's allocated, when that analysis is done. So this did not result in an otherwise avoidable inflation in special education FTE, which I think is the heart of your question. Yeah. Or Brent, it came from you to Ralph and back to Brent. Yes.
That was the scenario I was concerned about.
Yeah.
I had it too, so I was happy with it.
Let's see any other questions from Ms. Newland, so.
Yeah.
Dr. Kenneth.
So general education, we are increasing overall FTE by 0.9. This is due to 2 reasons. One, we have an increase in 0.4 in our Foundations of Nursing program of study. The reason we need to make that increase is because this school year, we had a site visit from the Illinois Department of Public Health, who indicated our class sizes of 24 were out of compliance. And if we didn't get into compliance, we would not have that program anymore. Their
seat size is 16. So we currently have 3 sections. Next year, we have an additional section to accommodate those 16 seats. We did turn away an entire section of students to try to stay within a reasonable amount of FTE. So that requires a classroom, a 0.2 for the classroom, as well as a 0.2 for the site. The site training students use, so the students go to Rush and they go in seven increments of 7 with a site instructor who is with them for the day. The 7 is required by Rush. Rush will not allow any more than 7 students at a time. So hence the 0.4. The additional 0.5 is coming from an increase in business and applied technology courses. So students are opting next year to take those 2 courses instead of a study hall. This year, I think we found that we didn't have enough sections of electives, so we opened some more study halls when students couldn't get into electives. We are opting next year to encourage kids to take those electives versus the study halls. So this year, 50 sections, next school year, 40 sections of study hall. So obviously better for students to be in a class than to be in a study hall. Additionally, like Andrea, we looked at our instructional coaches on the general education side. Had 2 retirements in the English division and realized that we could absorb 0.4, so 0.2 from each of the coaches. They'll teach an additional course in the English division. Again, same scenario. We are absorbing retirement and need by filling it with 0.4 from those coaches.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how I feel about hearing that we had to turn away a section of students who wanted to do the nursing. Can you talk a little bit more about how you came to that decision rather than asking for the additional FTE?
So they are they're sophomores and juniors, so we knew that they had time. And so in addition to being mindful of the FTE, it's also hard to find a certified nurse to go to the site with the students to Rush. So we're already, we don't have the 0.2 right now. Like, we don't know which nurse would do that. We currently are utilizing nurses from Rush who are doing this as an additional gig. So that was also a huge portion of the concern. But right now we just don't have the capacity. So how much do you grow the program until it's, out of control, not quality? You can't fill it. So
And it might be helpful just to add to it that each new section of the nurse foundations of nursing class also results, so it points to each new section, but it also results in a point to increase for a site supervisor because the program requires students to have this field experience. So anytime increasing the classroom portion, we also need to find a supervisor.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I have the same concern that Sarah had as voice. And so what kind for the future, because I think this is a very, very important program. And I in my layman's brain can see that this might be a program that could grow and grow very quickly to some large numbers. So my big question is, I hate to see anybody turned down, especially because this is a pathway that may be, it's obviously post-secondary, but it may lead right to career.
Sure.
Okay, especially with our students being in Triton's district and Triton having such a renowned program in nursing. So my concern is, how can you plan for the future? All right, you need to get, do some surveying and some data work in whether it's our younger students or maybe in the middle school, to see where that demand may be over the next 5 years. So that if we need to build, that we can build it, you know, on a solid foundation.
So on Tuesday, we're engaging in the My Future, My Pathway. And we do have city colleges bringing their health sciences. And so we are looking for other ways to maybe take the load off of the internal and partner with additional spaces and places. So we are looking at that and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, thank you.
But I have a question about great program you mentioned. That program you mentioned, I'm just not happy with hearing it. Is that open to all grade levels or to certain grade levels? And how does that exactly work? I know that was talking to students about it, they hear about us on general information.
It's only the sophomore, freshmen and sophomores.
Okay.
Juniors are taking the Illinois science stuff.
Right, it's all.
So this is the second year, so the current sophomores and juniors went through it last year. The sophomores will go through it again, but now we're adding the freshmen. So as we continue to matriculate, students will be able to go through it on 2 occasions.
So
Freshmen and
if you're a senior, like say you mentioned city colleges, if you're a senior, you're in students progress, are you allowed to come and?
Yes. Seniors are allowed to come.
Okay,
They were asked to register, to send an email to us and let us know that they wanted to register. Fortunately, right now, we are maxed out at every single session is at its capacity.
that's good and bad. I mean, love to hear
Very
this, but I
very
wish we had more students that guess if they want to, but
Yes.
I imagine I'm so happy about hearing about the program, as you know, that's been my.
Yeah. All of the trades are
Yeah.
full at capacity, 5 sessions.
I'm done.
Just have an easy question. Rush, Oak Park or Big Rush?
Roger.
Okay, do we go to Big Rush? You say we need there is such a shortage of nurses. That, I don't know, there's a need for other help there.
Well, my neighbors are both nurses, they're practitioner and a nurse. So perhaps I can tap into that resource for you. So I'll be happy with that, as you know, I will. And I will call you. And one looks out.
And my wife is on the board at Big Rush. So that's what I'm saying. Do we need to reach?
Mr. Patrick would enjoy any assistance. Yes, he is, as the division head, he does this grunt work, he makes all of his connections. And someone who is not in the nursing field is done a phenomenal job of creating partnerships with Rush and a local nursing home. So it definitely isn't that we don't want the program to grow, it's just we need to temper it so that we grow at the pace with which we have the people to do this. But and pre-sections is amazing, we're very excited.
Yeah, this has been on a steady growth trajectory since he started this
Done an excellent
5 years ago, I think. I think it was my first year in the district that he did this, so hats off to Matt for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is one question. I will say that what I hear from the students, that they enjoy the program. And so what's going to happen is word of mouth. All right, is going to grow the program substantially.
It's leading to an endorsement. Remember we talked, Dr. Lamb was here, she talked about that endorsement. So it is leading, we do have 2 students right now that will get that endorsement on their transcripts. So it will grow and we will in time continue to grow it. But any guidance, any emails you could send to Mr. Kirkpatrick with contacts or names would be wonderful.
Can you provide this information so I know who to email? Like I think someone text.
Right, let's keep moving.
Our next category is administration and management, and we separated into administration and management because according to the Illinois School Code, administrators only go to work on their professional educator license. So we also have leaders, supervisors who do not have a professional education license, but they do a similar level of job, so been included in this category. And here we would like to talk about two changes that are the result of two former administrators separately from the district. That's the position of Executive Director of Operations and Executive Director of Educational Technology. With Executive Director of Educational Technology, the decision was made to not replace this position. As for Executive Director of Operations, that allowed us to assess what needs we have in terms of daily operations in the building, and we are reallocating the FTE to create an assistant principal of operations position, and that I will ask Ms. Parker to talk a little bit more about the position.
So this position is actually responsible for supervising and coordinating daily functions within the entire building in support of our educational programs, so and school safety. So think logistics, and then also with day-to-day operations. So making sure that safety and support are overseen. And then also with just the room management within our building, making sure for testing and for master scheduling that we have the proper spaces available for that within our building.
I'll pause here for any questions from Ms. Parker.
Will this also overlook food service?
Not food service, the one I didn't say was registration. So registration and residency when we do the process. But so think registrar's office, but not food service.
And food service will report to the assistant superintendent for business services next year.
The next category is non-instructional support positions, and that is probably the largest category that we have. It includes buildings and grounds, campus safety, classified professionals, which is primarily teachers and middle class secretaries and some other supervisory positions, student supervisory positions. We have food service and we have non-affiliated professional employees that are in this role, non-instructional support. So we will not have any considerable changes to categories outside of buildings and grounds and campus safety. Campus safety we already discussed previously, so I want to focus on the request that we have for an increase in the buildings and grounds. Specifically, we would like to talk about the custodial positions, and the request is to increase the overall staffing level of custodians by 2 full-time positions. So just to address the need for these two positions is twofold. But the reason for both positions is due to recently completed construction project. And the first need where we are able to identify is in the south cafeteria. Prior to the new cafeteria opening, the space was all on one level. And it also had a folding side bench seating on wheels. So what it meant for cleaning purposes, that the tables were faced in such a way that it could be easily folded for cleaning, and the floor machine could be used to clean in between the rows of tables. With the new south cafeteria, we took into account what the student needs were to make space more welcoming. We created a raised area for elevated seating, and also we have mixed type of furniture that is not foldable. So while it's a more welcoming space for our students, it has added 3 additional hours for cleaning purposes. And we have only one custodian assigned to clean the space. And the result, the space is not available to school events unless additional custodians are brought to help cleaning, and that results in overtime. The second need that we identified is because of addition of 22,000 square feet of new space in the student resource center. Besides adding square footage, all of these areas also have carpet and glass finishes, which require additional time for cleaning. So that's another change that causes us to increase the staffing level in that area. So we also looked at the recommended levels of cleaning by the School Facilities Management Task Force and Association of School Business Officials International. And according to their recommendation, there should be one custodian assigned to clean approximately 18,000 square feet, 18 to 20,000 square feet in an 8-hour shift. Currently, our cleaning space is being completed about 750,000 square feet, and was 30 full-time custodians. Each custodian responsible for cleaning approximately 25,000 square feet in an 8-hour shift. But when we are able to add 2 additional positions, the number will go down to approximately 23,000 square feet. And I just wanted to introduce once again Director of Buildings and Grounds, Fred Truth is here, and our head custodian Tony Hagan is also here to help me answer any questions you might have about this request.
Sure.
So this really isn't a question about the request, which to me seems reasonable. It's really more a question for Greg or a request. So this is the second issue tonight that's come up that is resulted, we've heard an increased need for FTEs based upon facilities renovations, right? The first is with security, with the learning, with the classrooms that were constructed from the library, et cetera. And now, we have additional needs from the Student Resource Center and the cafeteria. I would love it if when coming forward with proposals, if we could have a sense of what kind of additional sort of hidden fees or hidden costs might be included in facilities renovations. Such as this, because, I think we all assume that we're approving projects, but we're also, unbeknownst to us at the time, we're approving additional FTEs that are going to be needed to make those spaces function properly. And so it'd be really helpful to, like a raised cafeteria space, like it looks really cool, but if we had known that we need to hire an additional person, in perpetuity to help manage that space from like because the floor machines, like that's stuff that we would never know as board members, right? That's now created this new process that we need to put in place, so.
Yeah, so let me respond in 2 ways. I think that's obviously perfectly fair. I absolutely do recall, actually when Mike Carriasha was working for the district, this exact question came up with Project One. And the idea was that after Project One was complete, you would monitor and then come back to the board with what that is. So while it was named earlier, your question applies pretty well because you're saying you want to know kind of an estimate of what that might be dollar-wise, personnel-wise, prior to moving in. I just want to clarify that's the question.
Yeah, well, ultimately, like sort of in terms of scope, I mean, I recognize that whether a floor is raised or not is not a decision that would necessarily come to the board level. But if the administration is approving a design that might necessitate that, because that's something we never thought about, obviously, that the raised floor would mean that we can no longer use the floor cleaners, but that's a big issue, right? So would we have made that design choice had we known that?
That's great.
Maybe not, like it seems like a pretty small design feature that's causing us considerable expense in perpetuity.
Yeah, we can try to evaluate. I mean, this applies obviously very well to Project Two, but frankly, not only Project Two. When we think about our backfields, field renovation and all that, it's worth kind of taking a look at those as well. So we can do some analysis and come back. I think that's a fair request. Thank you. Fred will be very happy to tackle that. Fred, if you could let me know by Monday.
Not a problem.
That's great. Thanks.
So I had the exact same concern or question, so I do think it's a good task to look at what we have. Because an architect might design something that really looks pretty, right? And it kind of has this aesthetic view, but sometimes practicality might be a little, that's the engineer versus architect battle coming out right here.
Versus form,
Pardon?
function versus form.
Function versus form, so I think that I second her ask. Unrelated to, or related to the topic.
I'm just gonna. I agree, and I'm gonna just reiterate what I always say when this comes through. When we're adding FTE and the total cost, please give me cuts in other areas, because we're already at 138%. And I don't want to go to 145%. I just don't. So there's gotta be, if these are needed new resource allocations, and I will trust your determination, you're in the building, you know more than me. There also have to be areas we can save money and resources, so that we're not just building a base that explodes over time and requires a referendum to fund, right?
Any other questions for drivers on me?
So I guess so the question is, when is this gonna come to us for approval?
2 weeks from today. So the idea is for us to come to the board at the regular.
Yeah, so it'd be nice to have some of those savings then. I approve of all these things. I will vote no unless there's some savings brought up to us.
Can I ask for clarity on that? So there are some savings that we have built in.
Yes,
to
but we're
this.
still adding to our base over $300,000.
So I want to clarify what this means exactly. So, and this is, I don't mean to, do back and forth here, but I want clarity. So when we take a look at this, the bottom chart, we have a total, including the safety security edition, of 366,800. Okay. When we take that out, we're 78,800, and that's including the stuff that we have in there. So when you're asking for those savings, it's against that 366, including the safety security editions we've already talked about. Yeah. So okay.
Greg, it's just a, in my mind, I'm sorry, I'm not talking. I'm really not trying to be penny wise and dollar foolish. I'm really trying to take, though, a fiscal stewardship approach. We're well over adequacy. There has to be some inefficiency here. You can't tell me spending 138% of what the evidence indicates you need is 100% efficient. So that being the case, when you then want to add to the base, you not meaning you personally, but the administration, and they have a good reason to add to the base. I think every reason that was put on the table here was a legitimate reason. I don't quibble with it at all. I want to see the administration then take a hard look at other areas where we're spending money, so that we can identify a reallocation of resources, so that we're not just constantly growing the base, but we are making the best utilization of resources in a district that's already well resourced.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. I understand it's a logical request. We've talked about that many times, so I'm not saying anything new when I bring this up. I guess the only additional kind of piece I want to throw out there is that many times when we were talking, the extent of many of the bulk of the dollars we're talking about when we're talking about the reallocation of these resources are tied up in personnel.
I get it.
And so that is a longer term shift, right, than just an immediate one right now. So I just wanted to provide that context.
While that's legit, have I seen any plan for the administration for reducing that long-term cost that would offset some of these? No, I have not. So if that's the position you're taking, then what I would like to see is, yes, we have things tied up in personnel, we have retirements, we have all this. We have identified that over the next 3 years, we can save $300,000. So the actual addition to the base here is $68,000. Okay,
Same page.
see what I'm saying?
Yep.
But I'm not seeing that either. So all we get as board members is the ask for the increase, and what I don't see are the administration taking a hard look on making the savings.
I would just add one more sort of piece to what, right? I mean, I agree with Ralph. I think the other thing too, though, is
you know, the more we increase our salaries, like the less money we have to do anything else with. So even while you might be able to come back in budget season and say it's cost neutral or we're balancing the budget, over time, that's just not sustainable. And eventually we end up with a building that with a lot of people working in it with no lights, no, no running water, no heat.
Or leaky.
Right, or the pool. So I think it's
Billions of dollars deferred maintenance.
yeah, I think it's about not simply looking at the FTEs and the adequacy chart. I mean, I think that's part of it, but I think we also need to also have the context of that greater budgetary picture over time as well.
I have a couple of questions. And one is, there's been discussion. I just want to make sure that this is the request, because there's been discussion about freshman curriculum and do we need to reshape the size of the number? Okay, so I mean, this is it. Okay, I just want to make sure that there's not a B or a C version, and I know the district has done well in bringing it together.
There's no Columbo moment coming.
Okay, and the second, I agree with Ralph's premise. Okay, I do see that you have taken, there's efforts to find and identify where things are. Okay, but it still is continuing to go up. And then one of the questions I had was enrollment. What is to me, the foundation of this, and I know it's not just a single number of enrollment, because I think as Andrew was saying, we got the same number of kids and we're just keeping them longer. So, but that's our denominator. I mean, because I lived through the years of our enrollments going up, and we staffed up significantly between 2013 and 2018, in some cases on a premise that our enrollment was going from 3,300 to on a path to 4,000. So can you just confirm, and I think would we add that in? What is the projected change of enrollment? How many students are we servicing that we're using to support these resources? The evidence-based funding will it will neutralize, it will come up the way the calculation. But I'm just asking, what's the enrollment projection?
3339 for next school year, versus 3351 for this school. So that's flat.
So it is down by 12. It's flat. I was gonna say. I was gonna do a little math. It's very flat. So that kind of gets you, says that staffing needs to somewhat follow that. Recognizing, and I agree with what Ralph said. In terms of what bucket it's put in, I'm trusting the judgment of the administration where you feel we need the dollars to best support our students. But that forces you then to have to prioritize, okay, versus just add. If you're gonna have to say it's more $1 here in special, I can't see my glasses, Rob, in bucket A is more critical to our student success than in bucket B. I am 100% behind you, and that's the support when you get into it on an individual basis. But from a zero-sum game, I'm in Ralph's bucket.
Yeah, so I think that's a perfect segue into evidence-based model, and
We did that just to set you up.
I know, I appreciate it. So you can see the chart, we identified all the areas where we have an increase, but also the areas where we have the reductions. And so the increase typically comes the specialist teacher, special education teachers, supervisory aides, assistant principal, school-side staff, maintenance and operations, and then a reduction from the following investments: core teachers, instructional facilitator, and central office. So I just wanted to point out one thing that, you know, what, we talk about student needs, but we also have to keep in mind what Andrew was talking about, that some of it is not just student need, but it also compliance issues, and we have to remain, so in special education, primary compliance. And likewise, like we talked about the class size, new IDPH requirement for the nursing program, the class size went down to 16, so we cannot violate it, we have to stay in compliance. This is wanted to emphasize this one more time. And then finally, overall cost. So the chart that was provided goes over each category where we have additions, where we have subtractions. So I just wanted to direct your attention to the total cost with campus safety. So that you see the overall picture is $366,800. It's different from what you see on the adequacy target chart because we did not count, as I mentioned earlier, we did not count the reduction in the special education instructional support position as savings because funds that were used for that were grants. And so we'll be using those grants for something else, but the evidence-based model does not differentiate where the revenues come from. And so the only requests that will come to the board for approval 2 weeks from now, on March 23rd, would be an increase of 2.7 FTE for instructional positions and 2.0 FTE for custodial position. So the total cost is $78,800. That's, again, it's not including campus safety because we have a separate recommendation that we're asking the board to vote on later today. Any other questions?
Hearing that, I thank you, and I think this, my comment is, I think you put it together in a very clear, understandable way. So, you know, using evidence-based model, which we do, having a summary. So the communication is good, and hopefully the communication from us is equally as clear, and we're gonna.
I'll be there, thank you.
Thank you. Our next topic. We are on 9C, which is the district registration fees proposed for 2022. I keep saying 2022, 23, 24.
Yeah, Cindy Sidor is here to talk about this. This is essentially a restructuring of our registration fees, kind of evening out the impact of the fees on our families over their 4 years. So Cindy, if you could give us a quick overview, brief overview, that'd be great. And then
Any
we'll-
questions? No.
That's fine.
That's the kind of.
That's fine. You can start there.
No, actually, just a little bit behind it. So what we did is we actually sat with a lot of departments here. We went through all their fees. Because right before COVID, we went through and scrubbed out some of the just the student fees. This time we went through, we were going through all the fees that were throughout the district, asking if these are fees that were still applicable or should they be changed. So what we did is when we were done with that, we went down and looked at what we can do to possibly make things easier for parents too if they pay. Because it's confusing seeing all these different fees on that. So what we tried to do is go through an average cost. We looked down at what our comparable districts are, and we're falling right in range of it. It's hard to do apples to apples because school districts do things separately and differently. So we basically said that those are adding up to about the same. Then the other thing had done is we said, well, if we do an average cost and we just say, whether you're a freshman, whether you're a child sophomore, they're going to pay this fee. That's it, sort of across the board. And then we put down what they would receive. So they would get the student summary, they have the lanyards, the IDs and everything there. And the last thing that we also looked at was the free and reduced students. Currently what we do is we reduce students that are 90% who are considered reduced off the National School 120 application. And, you know, charging somebody 10% who's struggling already, it sort of makes sense to say, why don't we move them to 100%? So that is what we're requesting from the board today. So with that, I will ask any questions.
First of all, I love that idea. Back early start. And secondly, do we tend to forget about those people in the middle that might still need a little bit of help? Is there a way to pay this in increments instead of all at once?
Absolutely, we even changed that this year. So what we did with the payment plan, it used to be pay so much each month. We found, you know, I've always felt that if somebody may struggle through a month of that, so we just said just pay it by the end of the school year. So that's what we've done with them. But we've had many families sign up for
Thank
that.
you, I appreciate that, because we often forget about the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I have a couple things. So these are exclusive of sophomore year driver's ed fee.
Correct, yes,
That's charged separately.
yes,
And the graduation fee of $52,
correct.
which is charged for graduates.
They'll be they'll be charged in the beginning of the school year like they always are. And what happens with that is families will pay their drivers out usually in the semester their child is taking them.
And the Chromebook fee of $50
Mhm.
represents what percentage of the total cost of the Chromebook?
1/2.
So a Chromebook is $100.
No, I'm sorry, it's $400 for the Chromebook, we charge $200. And then their senior year, they get to keep it, they don't have to return it.
And do they, are they charged to keep it?
No.
No, it's
No.
just theirs.
It's just there, so if they want to turn it in, we will recycle it for them. It's 4 years exactly, to appreciate them. Anywhere anyhow.
Most of the block, it'll last.
Yeah.
Other questions? Eric?
I just want to pause for a moment and reflect on where we were 8 years ago with this, which was like, to me, it's utterly bizarre process where students would be limited by, you know, what classes they could take based on their finances. So I am very grateful that we have moved away from that. I do think making it, averaging it out this way makes a lot of sense. My only query is, how are we recycling those Chromebooks?
Technology actually takes those and they recycle them, so they scroll out whatever on the Chromebook, and I believe they have a recycling company come and pick them up.
We're digging a little pit.
Yeah. Is it, are we paying a vendor?
We can get you more information.
Yeah,
Because if we're paying a vendor, you know, it needs to be,
I think we've uncovered a way to make yearly savings.
yes. So,
Okay. we
yeah,
can
for
find out.
seniors who want to turn it in, if they don't want to keep their Chromebook, yeah. I think, I mean, the senior in my house kept it and it's never been used since, so it might be a way to encourage, you know, students to. They're not gonna need this homework for college, right? That might be down. Anyway. We're good.
All right, any other questions? I have two questions. One is just as I'm looking at this, and maybe I'm not. Because currently it's at 2 levels, but the average of them is around 340, correct? So what's the net increase in fees that is being proposed?
so if you look at the top, that's the first one that we have,
Yeah,
your freshman, you were 345,
yeah,
now you're gonna be 355. But you are also going to get your you're gonna get 2 IDs, you're gonna get 1 lanyard, you're gonna get 1 PE shirt each year, instead of just 1 PE shirt in your freshman year. So the difference is the fact we took out the transcripts, those are no longer charged, and we also no longer have the $2 that would charge your CPR.
okay.
So the difference is if you're a freshman, it's 345, now it's 350. If you look at that, it would be 355 as an average, or 365.50. Therefore, we broke it out that you could see both of them.
Okay, it's, let me, my second question was. It says these fees that exist today have been in place for a number of years. Since 20,
The CIMF fee has not been changed, has remained the same since 2016, 17.
so that fee is meant to recover certain costs.
Correct.
So can you tell us how we stand, and you don't have to answer, how we stand in terms of what we're trying to reimburse or with the fees we're gathering? Are we profiting? Are we losing? What's going on with this?
So what it is we actually have policy 4142, which is for the bookstore operations, and they have to be self-sustaining. With that, you have to take into consideration the operating cost of personnel, inventory, and also equipment. So when we averaged out to 4 years with that, looking at the number of students, and that came up to 275.50. We were at 268, so basically we were right there in range. We just moved it up because going over the 4 years.
That's it. Any other questions? I think we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
This will come in 2 weeks for approval.
Our next topic is Project 2 financing updates. Providing your Project 2, what, me?
Yeah, and do you want,
Sure.
you want to take it off? Yeah, go ahead.
So, just kind of an update for the board, and please feel free to supplement. The CFC has been charged with coming back to the board with a variety of options that we can then look at to choose to make a financing decision. The committee met last on the 28th of February. I'm not going to get play-by-play, but there was a good discussion on what the fund balance. They've been charged to look at what the fund balance policy is, and they're zeroing in on a recommendation of a 25 to 50% as a range for the fund balance policy. So that's one piece that is critical to making a financing decision, knowing how we're going to do it. There was a discussion on debt policy that kind of it started getting into some details about debt policy, but then recognition that is it really about policy or is it about just debt recommendations? So there's an issue still there on, what needs to be codified in policy versus what needs to be recommended. Regardless, it was again the ask of the board members that we need fact on what other districts are doing, what is best practice when it comes to how debt is managed. So that was that discussion. There was a little bit of, I would say, opinion brought forth on certain things by members, and then the discussion quickly shifted to, as a CFC, we're not looking for opinion. We're looking for a series of options that are data based. Unfortunately, the committee was unable to meet when they, between these periods because of personal challenge, and so they were short one meeting. I will tell you that having served on the FAC in 2013, it took numerous months of a committee in numerous meetings to pound out what was ultimately the recommendation for our fund balance policy that exists today. So, you know, to be expecting that this committee, you know, in one meeting is gonna come up with a magic answer is unrealistic. And as a board, we need to allow them to do their work, recognizing we need to keep it moving on and do it right and give us the recommendations we need. And that was the signal we reinforced with them. We outlined that we just need factual, decisions that are factual information, looking at different financing options that really address 4 key pieces. 1, what's the impact on our taxpayer as we look at the different options? 2, what's the impact on our ability, our district's long-term ability to finance things? What's the impact on our debt? Right? How much of our debt are we consuming, et cetera? 3, what's the impact on the operational side of our district? Do we have differences? And 4, how does the option compare to policies and best practices? And so if that's the communication that we shared, and the committee will be meeting again next Monday, and will continue its hard work to work towards to providing a recommendation that can be brought forth to the board. But it's work in progress. And I'm thankful we have community members that are willing to do the hard work. And I look forward to their feedback. Questions?
I just have a quick math. So I'm assuming that part of the recommendations are approaches to financing project 2. Right?
Yes.
So I would like built into the calculation, if any financing recommendation involves delay, the cost of the delay, and then the financing that additional cost is part of it. So it's an apple to apple.
Correct. Yeah.
So if it's $102 million today, but we don't get shovel in the ground until 2025, is it 125 million that we're financing? I don't know the answer, but I want to compare apples to apples.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly the communication. It's if time needs to be factored in, et cetera. So you're singing.
That is in the information that we have put together. So the one thing that I'll add is that it's kind of implicit in what Tom has shared, is that the administration has worked closely with the leadership on CFC to answer the data questions that were named at the last meeting on the 28th, and we will be sharing them all out on Monday. Your question is in what we are sharing out.
The only other thing that would, and maybe it's not for the CFC, honestly, maybe it's then for when we're looking at the financing options here at the board level, is to just have a summary of the standard operational maintenance costs over the next 5 to 10 years that we will not be incurring. Ideally, have that, right? I know we have that data, but once again, I think that needs to be brought up there because that's something that helps us evaluate the overall cost in reality. Might be $102 million project right now, but if it's saving us 16 million in needed maintenance that we had planned for, the actual cost of the district is less than 102. It's that kind of thing. So I think when we're having the financing discussion, once again, having that amount in front of us would be helpful.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that before did I miss or okay, so he's good.
This is Sarah's hand was up.
Hey, Sarah's good. No, but Fred was Sarah was Fred. Who wants to go?
Fast, what can I say?
So the other piece that I would just add to this is I would like to understand how we should be thinking about the Imagine Foundation's work vis-a-vis the overall financing. Can we count on it? If so, how much can we count on? You know, like how should we be factoring that in?
Yeah, I can share that now. We actually heard it in a public comment tonight, and it's consistent with what has been shared with us directly from the foundation. That at this point, they constantly project 12.5 million as something that will be realized. And as a result, we have built that figure into the modeling that we will be sharing with CFC on Monday. Now, so that number could shift, right? As a result, but that is where we're starting from right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the other piece I want to add to that though, Greg, I hear what you're saying and thank you. But the other thing that I think I want to just emphasize is we're looking to this group for their expertise in finance, expertise that I as a board member do not have.
Right.
So I also want their assessment of like how we should be incorporating that information, not just like, here's the information, but you know, how we should be thinking about funding it when we have a target that we have apparently a guaranteed amount. I hate even to use the word guaranteed, right? It's not like guaranteed until it's
Right.
You know, so it's really just that uncertainty and how do we use that to be objective and.
I think we have to model it with and without. We can't until the money is literally in the door.
Agreed,
You
but like,
can't bank on it. But model A, it's $102 million project if we go shovel in the ground by July, whatever the date is. And it's $102 million, but it's really, we're saving $20 million in operation and maintenance costs going for capital needs going forward. So net new money to the district, it's an $82 million project. If we get $12 million in free grant money to support this, then it drops down to a $70 million project and we finance that. If we don't, I mean, we still have to have it without until the money's.
That's not quite what I was saying. The point I'm trying to make is I want to know how to think about it, right? Like I get that I got scenario A, B, C, and D, but how do I use the fact that we have this panoply of scenarios to actually arrive at only one decision? Because we have to arrive at one decision, not decisions, you know, not multiple decisions, right? So that's the piece I want to understand, right? How do we take that uncertainty and from a best practices perspective, incorporate that into whatever our decision is going to be?
So, okay. Yeah, so I think that makes perfect sense, and that is a key question for CFC to consider, right? If this, in other words, one way to tackle that question is if more money becomes available, or as money becomes available through donations, where does it go? We should have a model for how that goes and a contingency built into the modeling if in fact it doesn't come. That'll be a key question for CFC for sure.
Like in our district.
You have a question, Brent? Yes. Some questions, comments. So the first one we have to do with timeline. And they're meeting on Monday. We meet again in 2 weeks. And then we have an April cow meeting and an April board meeting. Is there a point in time where they will come to us and make a presentation, or how is this going to work? Will we have the opportunity to question, to ask questions and rather than just completely read their report?
Yeah, I mean, I think the board's goal, right, is to make a finance decision by the end of this semester. The soonest that we at one point had, so I'm kind of giving the goalposts and we're narrowing in on it because a hard deadline for when they're going to come is not set. The idea is sometime between now and the end of the semester that will happen. if you're asking for a kind of a crystal ball in some ways, right, when do we anticipate this coming? I think that it would be fairly, I think April is possible, for sure. April is possible. I don't know what type of update we would be able to give to the board 2 weeks from today, because that's gonna be completely dependent on what happens this coming Monday. But I think it's reasonable to expect that enough conversation will occur for at least a good substantive fact-based update will come to this board in April. Yeah. Is that fair, Tom?
I think that's fair. I think, you know, to answer your question, I think directly, the expectation is that that committee will present to this board
Yeah.
its report, which are what the options are and what the data is. And then it will be in our court to then be able to move forward with the financing decision. You know, they have more work to do, but they're making progress. And, you know, I think April is a realistic expectation.
Yeah, one of the things that I would say in my issues pretty much align with your 4 points. But really has to do with the term best practices. Best practices gets thrown out and around, and it's a smokescreen in many cases. And so when somebody says, well, it's best practices to do A, or it's best practices to do B, maybe it's the cynic in me, but you know, I want to see where it is best practices. Bring me the evidence that this is best practice.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I bet that I probably would agree with you, the word, it's just to look at what the data says.
Right.
And I would probably agree that it's circumstantial, right? I mean, not every district is in the same place as, you know, with the foundation, with this and that. So, but I would agree, we need it as data to look at so that we can then look at it and use it in our analysis and deliberation.
I also, you know, in one of the things that heartened me when we created the CFC was that they were gonna come up with a debt policy. Okay, because we've been the district has been debt free since somewhere around 2017 or 18. When we paid off the last, I think, 1.2 million or whatever it was of our debt. And I think that we need a debt policy that goes well beyond this. Okay. That would inform the board on whether, when we have a 10-year life safety audit and we have $5 million or $10 million of life safety issues, you know, we would look to a debt policy that would inform us as to, you know, should we be paying cash for that or should we be assuming debt? You know, obviously long-term issues, you know, where do we go? And I think that's really important because especially in the district now that has not had debt for a long time, you know, for several years, we need to be able to look at that, I think, for some guidance.
You just hit the key word, because I think that the general consensus, the current thinking of the committee, right?
Yeah.
Is that, you know, one, they will look at what others do.
Yeah.
But if it's not quote unquote a debt policy where it's all hard in, it could be a, you know, debt guidance. So.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing about, especially about this project, and what I would say, I want to say uncertainty is not the right word, but maybe some movable parts in terms of financing in that. In that, yes, we have a substantial amount of fund balance that we would utilized. But we've got a project that may take 18 months to 2 years to build. You know, we certainly wouldn't have to assume all of the debt immediately. We wouldn't issue the bonding or debt certificate or whatever it might be immediately, and that would come in over time. And the need for that, and I think Ralph pointed to it, could be moderated by the amount of philanthropic funding that's out there, and that's going to come in over time. You know, I remember when I was on that Imagine board prior to my being elected here, that was one of the things that the feasibility study talked about, okay, was the length of time. We wanted a shorter length of less amount of money, but they still thought it was very feasible to go for a longer time with more money. So this, I assume that the Imagine Foundation will be something that will go on in perpetuity for a period of time, at least through you know, the next few phases of the Imagine plan. So to understand that it's not a check for $103 million tomorrow, so we've got to issue the bonds tomorrow. We may be issuing the bonds a year and a half from tomorrow. And there may be differences in interest rates, there may be differences in construction costs, etc. And then the other thing is, and I think I heard Ralph talk about guarantees. I think one of the most important things here will be to get from our construction people, a guaranteed maximum price. Because that.
Yeah, but that's just to kind of segment, that's
something else.
That's not the finance committee. I mean, that's,
I understand.
they're, although they would love, you know, that's the responsibility of the project management and the facilities, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you can't make decisions on a number that's gonna move all over, so I agree.
That's all.
Right, anyone else?
Just real quick, so
Yep.
we're doing modifications to mechanical, so on and so forth, right, or project two.
I'm sorry, quite
Mechanical,
follow.
like HVAC,
Are we doing modifications to the mechanical in project two?
yeah,
Like
like part of our maintenance project, we're doing some replacement things directly now.
as part of our 10-year maintenance, yes, absolutely. Distinct from project two.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the ways that might overlap is as this board considers in the next several months what our long-term electrification plan might be.
That's what I was thinking.
That could have implications for both our 10-year maintenance and project two, of course.
Right.
But short of that conversation, which this board does not yet have, there's no concrete answer to that question.
So it would be good to know what that savings is for more modern equipment, how that saves us operationally as well.
Yeah, good call, yeah.
Your mom.
Yes,
I'm dear mom, I'm at a board meeting.
it was one of those already. The peanut gallery in the back really wants to move to the policy items in record time, and you can just tell. So,
I was looking at the agenda.
okay,
So, that concludes the discussion on project two financing, and thank you. We are in policy. Did we want to, is there a sequence to your preference?
yeah, well, actually, I suppose,
Yeah, we actually moved the board goal 5 up front because in it contained a committee discussion. So I'm gonna navigate through this one. This one could take an hour, or it could take less than an hour. Let me frame it up. So this is a board goal. And it relates to our challenges of the different committee liaison and other roles as board members that we play. And so what has been done, Fred's leaving.
Coffee, you told me it's gonna be another hour.
Oh, coffee, okay. What you were sent and what is before you is a review of policy that all tie to committee assignments and liaison roles, etc. So that's just, it was a brief recap of that, and then following that really are a series of questions that we need to answer that will determine which direction we want to go. This is not a get it all done in tonight issue. It's actually, my thinking was, it's something that this group would provide input on, and then we would be sharing it with the new board to then say, yeah, we agree with the old board. I don't, it isn't our job to put everything in cement and hand it, and make changes when we're having a board change. At the same time, we have the knowledge and experience that we can at least provide input to the next board. So that's what you were.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to go about it, and I think what we should do is we should all go through these questions and look at the different assignments of potential board positions to outreach, et cetera, and come back prepared maybe at the next COW to quickly talk about, here's where I, Ralph Martiri, I, Fred Arkin, I, Tom Kosky, et cetera, think we should change the policy or change representation, whatever. And one thing you have to keep in mind, we did this at D200. And we eliminated a number of these kinds of things, because what we recognized was it's a volunteer board of people who have day jobs. And so what we tried to do is prioritize the ones that had the greatest impact on our students and faculty, and make sure we covered all those and covered those well and eliminated the rest. Now that's just where we came. But I think having that kind of thoughtful, where's the value add, where should we really be devoting individual capacity? It's worth doing. I think this is a really good assignment to throw out the board, Tom. And I think giving our input to the incoming board should be helpful to them, and they'll have their own opinions coming in. But we do have to recognize it's coming in context of a volunteer position. People that also have day jobs for the most part. And families.
Sarah?
The one, I agree with Ralph, I'm happy not to do too deep a text tonight. Very tired. But the one thing I would add is, I think as we're thinking about this, we should also think about the benefit to the board member of participating in some of these groups, right? Because I think IGov, for example, has, I know we're not really talking about that because it's different from the groups, right? But
No, IGov is one of them.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, there is
on the
value,
list.
there is, sorry, I mean, oops, didn't stick in my head. There is value to new board members, especially having that experience, maybe people on other boards, but also interfacing with families in a way that they probably maybe haven't before, whether it's through community council or something else. So I agree, and I have been having this conversation since Steve Soya. At one point, the suggestion was to do quarterly meetings where we would convene all of the parent stakeholder groups and just be able to do for a year and maybe have board members rotate through it. So there was sort of a more bang for your buck kind of approach, right? That was one permutation, not a lot of success because we couldn't get the committees to align on a night or a place. But I think there are a lot of different ways to approach this. But I do want to point out that new board members especially could benefit probably from participation in these groups in a way that we might not think of as board members should right in a minute.
So let me just at least frame up what I think are the questions that we need to answer, not recognizing we're not going to answer them today. I don't think, Ralph, you've already kind of framed them up. And I'm gonna go the order they're listed, but I think they're probably not listed in the best order, right? I think the issue at hand is, if you look at the number, and I'm calling them committees, it's liaison role, it's government roles. For the sake of this discussion, I'm calling it committee where you sit on with a group to keep it singular, okay? From a word standpoint, to be quicker, okay? So, question one is, are there any that we don't need? And I'm saying that would be get rid of the committee as a whole, right? Or merge it, or do,
Participation?
pardon?
I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to interrupt, but are you saying get rid of our participation on the committee?
No,
Because-
no, I'm not even talking about, I'm just saying the first is, does the entity, there are some inactive ones that don't even exist. So this is nothing to do whether you're on it or not. The question is, does it serve a value? Or is there a consolidation opportunity, et cetera? That's one question, which, because there are currently inactive ones, they're already in that kind of limbo, right? The question number two is, if you look at our policy, some of them are specifically named in our policy, okay? Named in our policy are a couple board committees, but there's also then specific reference to ones, and it's stated above. So the question becomes, then there's gaps there. Do we need to name everything in policy, or do we get rid of what's in policy? But it's inconsistent right now of what's in and what's out. So I'm not saying which way or not. That's the kind of the committee side, not the human representation side, right? Those two questions addressed, okay? Question three really is, I think, question 3 and 4 talk about the roles on those entities, right? And so 3 is about representation. And what the data says is that, we've morphed to where we are, okay? And expectations are maybe set or et cetera, not in line with policy, okay? It does not state anywhere that, other than one place, which is board committee. That's the one place that it says a board committee will have 2 board members. Other than that, there is no reference to board members needing to, et cetera, be involved in anything. Okay, we have over the years probably, joined and been asked to, and expectations become set of what, and we are where we are today. Is that where we need to be? That's the question at hand. What is the role? Does a board member need to be? Is it an administrative duty, right? And we're overstepping our bounds, or is it a good opportunity, as you said, Sarah, to align because of our duty or board responsibility to, align with the community? Is it an opportunity? So that's the third question: is what role do we play and how formal is it? And you and I even had a little, some cases, because we're stretched, okay? But in some cases, it might be that it's just a thought. I'm getting into solution, okay? Instead of having a board be a participant of the committee, that they're assigned to a committee and they go once every couple months, but they're the contact. They know that they can go to you. There's some middle ground or something that is different. We can debate that. The fourth key question is, what are the expectations of the board members then that are on that committee? And and that means attendance. It means any communications, et cetera. None of that is written, defined. It's all kind of morphed by folklore. So Those are the 4 questions that I've come up with. I'll stop.
We're discussing that tonight.
No.
Oh. So
Absolutely.
we set those up and this is for discussion in later point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the consensus was it's late. We're done,
Yes,
okay?
right.
And I don't, I want valued input, so I just wanted to at least frame it up and talk to it, and whoever's idea was, if we're gonna bring this back to another cow.
Perhaps it should be homework instead of another discussion of the meeting. This is a long.
Yes,
Maybe you want synopsis and write, submit and discuss the synopsis instead of going through each.
Right.
Item, that's a lot of items.
I would also be interested in hearing from the administration what committees. Administration members or faculty attend that are parent liaison, and like what the recommendation is around those as well, because I also want to. It's not necessarily our job, but I think we also should be mindful of the burden us not appearing might then put on the administration to appear, right? And is that the best use of the administrator's time?
Yeah, we're happy to review that. Yeah, that makes sense. We've had some conversations about shifting some of these committees around anyway, as far as administrative responsibilities are concerned. And that's just part of that conversation.
I also want to make clear that we're super grateful for all of our parent groups, right? And I don't want this
Absolutely.
to be construed as the board not being invested or interested in the work that they're doing.
But there are limits to personal capacity
Of
and
course.
doing things well.
Of course, but I think that those conversations need to be had with committees, which Tom has in here to be clear, but that we need to get that feedback from the committees. as well.
absolutely. And I, again, things morph, there's value, but then entities change and you don't unchange, et cetera. So it's just a chance to take a re-rack at it. So the action then, the next step is read it, think about it, and we're gonna have to pound it out, just asking it, questions at a time. I would say, you could say which order do you want to attack it? We're gonna do it by piece, yes.
Just let me know which board meeting I need to plan my business travel. What's in that?
This is your business, this is policy.
Well, I would.
Speaking of policy, I mean, all the first reading to discuss.
Right, but I would request that if that's gonna be an agenda item, that we're mindful what else is on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's gonna be deferred to other meetings.
Correct, yeah, this is as I said, this is an hour and
It's more than an hour. It's
Yeah,
more.
I know, hour is all I can, that's the maximum. So, okay. With that said, we're now gonna start and move on to our last policy item, which is policies for first read.
A lot of these are cross-reference changes.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot. It did not this year. There was a lot there.
I had one question. But I gotta find it. In my policy.
So is the duration of our discussion on it's gonna be an hour. I remember when I went to the opening of the House of Hope, that Reverend was outside. And his sermon lasted close to 2 hours. And he came up to me afterwards and said, "Rob, what you think of my sermon?" I said, "Rev, no souls get saved after 30 minutes."
Okay. Right.
Second.
We adjourn.
I have a standing motion to adjourn once Tom's question is raised and answered. Get that out of the table.
It's gonna be a really good question.
Oh, you're killing me.
Look, it's
You're
not.
kind of setting it up. I just need some.
Oh, my question is on is on policy 2:150 committees. No, it was. I had it.
So that Mexican place on Lake is still. The one that like where the Five Guys used to be.
Taco 2.
Yeah.
I defer my question and we'll raise it at second.
I have no objection to that.
Yeah, it was a minor question, and in the essence of me finding it, I can.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wait, yes.
You wanted
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Any future agenda items?
No.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
Then we have a special.
Yeah, so I'm trying to extend the special, my happy crew in the back. You can feel free to. Take off.
Ken, are we ready?
We're still live.
Okay.
You just go right into it.
No, I'm looking for the right thing. I call to order the special board meeting at 10:50 PM in the boardroom of Oak Park Room 4 in high school, and ask for roll call.
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Henry,
Here.
Ms. Martyri,
Here.
Ms. Spivey.
Yeah.
Ms. Arkin.
Here.
Mr. Costa.
Here. Our first order of business is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
None. You're probably asleep by now.
Our second section is action items. I move to approve the personnel recommendation, including new hires, transfers, resignations, and retirements.
Second. Move a second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
discussion, roll call please.
Mr. Martyri,
Yes, with future savings to be identified.
Ms. Spivey,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, Mr. Costa.
Yes. Our second action is I move to approve the campus safety staffing recommendations.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Martyri,
Yes, with future savings to be identified.
Ms. Spivey,
Yes.
Mr. Costa.
Yeah, with future savings to be identified.
Motion to adjourn.
I move to approve the memorandum of agreement with SEIU local number 73, campus safety and support.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Martyri,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Ms. Spivey,
Yes.
Mr. Costa.
Yes. Any future agenda items?
Motion to adjourn.
I, Tom Kofsky, hereby move. All in favor, adjourn the special
There you go, the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.